What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Wednesday show, gang. Diving right in, seems like Colin Sutherland, our guy out there, is waiting on a tornado, doing a little bit of a promo for the upcoming blockbuster Twisters. Coming soon in theaters, I believe next Friday. Hopefully Colin's going to be around and doesn't end up in the land of Oz before that one comes out. But good luck, buddy. Hopefully it doesn't head your way. If it turns your way, be more like, Bill Paxton and less like Carrie Elwes. Let's say that at least. Hopefully everybody gets that reference. The original Twisters remains fantastic. We've talked about that before. Very much like our love for Deep Blue Sea that I was talking about just the other day. It is a delicious, gigantic, cheesy blockbuster movie. It's a bigger movie for sure than Deep Blue Sea is. But anyway, I digress. We've got an interesting slate to talk about today. Happy hump day. Hopefully your work weeks are going well. Cujo Blues here. Collins here. Lone Wolf's here. 8-game. Pink Hand Wave to 8-game. What's going on, gang? Good to see everybody. Interesting night of baseball last night. Did not quite get where I wanted to be, but I thought a lot of the things we talked about kind of came through. A lot of the home run picks notably came through. That Red Sox game went off, but the A's kind of went off on the other side of that one. Some interesting spots that we talked about. So hopefully we'll land on something a little bit more concrete. I've got a lineup built that I love. It's going to be one of those cases of just like, it looks so good I couldn't help but play it, but then ends up not coming through because it looked too good, right? Or it'll be duped if it does. But gonna mess around with it a little bit and see if I can make it a little bit more unique. But there's some really strong combinations out there. Seems like a heavy day for offense. A lot of big totals on the board to talk about. It's a 9-gamer on FanDuel. They are not including Game 2 of the Royals at Cardinals series, where DraftKings is including that one. So we've got 10 games on DK, 9 games on FanDuel. Throws a bit of a wrinkle into it. But it's a really interesting looking slate. And we'll dive right in. Like I said, a lot of runs on the board for one thing. You can note upper right-hand corner there, all the deep green 5+ numbers, and honestly, all those are well above 5 runs. So we've got the Phillies, the Red Sox, the Reds, and the Mets all drawing 5+ implied totals, which is a strong start. Several of those are just kind of obvious high-end teams anyway that we get to anyway, and you don't necessarily need that support, but it's always nice to have it, backing up the idea of going to just star-laden lineups like that. So really interesting starting point there. You can see some high mid-4s, upper 4s totals as well going down the board here. We've got several different spots with wind blowing out. We don't really have weather concerns. There were some weather concerns in the earlier slate, but nothing really overly impacting the main here. It seems like there's a little bit of rain in the Philly area, but seems all right. Winds out to left center, 15 miles an hour. Hot, humid in the northeast. Oakland at Boston, once again, looks like a strong target for bats with a 10-run total to lead the slate. Winds out to left, 10 to 15 miles an hour. Same scenario as yesterday. And then in Queens, Washington and the Mets, with Patrick Corbin on the mound pitching to that right-handed Mets power, winds out to left at 15 to 20 miles an hour. And it's, again, 90-something degrees. It's humid. It's hitting conditions. 9.5 run total in that one. There is a little bit of minor pop-up shower, pop-up rainstorm risk, again, courtesy of Mr. Roth here, but extremely minor in the Colorado-Cincinnati game. Winds out to left in that one, 10 to 15 miles an hour. And then that KC-St. Louis game, the second game of that, seems just like it's fine. But he says he's going to swing back around, so I guess you should swing back around for weather on that one later on. Looking at the actual slate, the Dodgers and the Phillies with a 9.5 run total there. Two very high-end lineups. Christopher Sanchez going against Gavin Stone. Sanchez, he's been very, very good this year. He's a good ground ball pitcher. He saps power out of opposing lineups. He's got a microscopic ERA, a little bit higher of an xFIP. I think he is probably overpitching his talent, his stuff, But it's working out, and it's difficult to go against him. Fortunately for that case, though, it is an extremely good opponent on the other side of the Dodgers, so I don't know that we need Christopher Sanchez shares, but he's there if you want him. On the other side, it's Gavin Stone pitching for the Dodgers. Obviously, we're pushing a 5.13 total in the direction of the Phillies, who got Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber back yesterday. Seems like a good day to roster some Phillies bats. Dodgers are always in play for offense. 4.47 implied total for Los Angeles, 5.13 for the hometown Phillies. Second game up, the Athletics at the Red Sox. Again, the highest run total on the board at 10. Pretty strong conditions for hitting again. 5.80 implied total for the Red Sox as a monster leads the slate on a heavy day for offense. Several of their hitters in the confirmed lineup look very, very strong. Even with it is a lefty on the mound. It's JP Sears going for Oakland, who can be effective from time to time, and we've gone to in different spots. He had a couple decent starts in a row, but he's gotten pounded. Got absolutely crushed by Minnesota. 3 starts back and is super gettable in these conditions. But it does shake up the Red Sox lineup a little bit, so we'll look at the different options in the Red Sox lineup. That was one of the things that came through after we talked about it yesterday. Hopefully some people out there drilled the Wilyer Abreu home run later in that Red Sox lineup at pretty lowish ownership compared to where some of the other Red Sox were. And then I didn't have, and I pretty specifically said I didn't like Dom Smith, who ended up coming through and hitting the home run on that one and being pretty key. But everybody in that Red Sox lineup last night scored. And looks like the same kind of conditions again here. Nick Pivetta on the mound for Boston, pushing a 4.33 implied total again in the same strong hitting conditions for Oakland. We saw how that lineup can go off in those kind of conditions, and they do have some solid home run bats in that lineup. So there's upside for them as well. Pivetta is good, but can definitely get got. He had a very strong 7-inning start against Miami at Miami in his most recent one, but had a couple shakier ones, 5 earned runs, 3 earned runs, 3 earned runs, 4 earned runs, going back over his 4 starts previous to that one. So there is some ability to target with low-owned, cheapo Red Sox Athletics bats against the Sox again. Might be a spot to consider for value. The Rockies at the Reds, 5.41 implied total, 5.42 implied total. Important 100th of a run there for the Reds going up against Kyle Freeland. And then coming back the other way, 4.20 implied total for the Rockies against Frankie Montas. Montas is another pitcher that is super gettable. He's okay, but he tends to give up earned runs, and he can get nailed. He hasn't really blown up this year. 5 runs is the earned run high for the season. He's given up 4 several times. He can get hit for power. He does have strikeout stuff on the right day. He could absolutely breeze through this Rockies lineup. But it's going to be another day where we're going to talk about those Rockies bats a little bit, because they're probably going to come in under-owned in, again, the same kind of a situation where advantageous hitting environment between the ballpark, the wind blowing out, and not an overly intimidating pitcher against an improving Rockies lineup that, 4.20 on some days, that's a solid mid-range total. It's just this is a day with a lot of offense showing. But for the Rockies, that's not a bad total on the road. So they're showing a little upside. Washington at the Mets. We saw Jose Quintana have a great game yesterday. Today we get Luis Severino for the Mets, and facing one of our favorite target pitchers, Patrick Corbin. Love some Mets bats today, 5.53. You can guess they're probably in my lineup right now. Like I said, it's one of those lineups that looks good on this side of lock and will probably come out the other side as a total wash. But Corbin is always a target for me. 4.08 implied total on the national side, 5.53 for the Mets. Seems like a good spot for bats on both sides. I could definitely endorse some Washington bats against Sevy. He's been up and down this season. Does have several good starts on his ledger, but he's also got several, like his most recent one, 7 earned runs, struck out 3, gave up 3 home runs to the Pittsburgh Pirates the last time out. I think we all remember that one. The Royals at the Cards, 8.5 run total in that one. 2 lower ends, run totals in between, both of these in the mid to low 4s. So we don't have, this is the first game where we don't have a team above 5. These compare to the road teams in those first few games. It's Gordon Graceffo making his first full start. First appearance was in bulk relief. Graceffo going for the Cardinals, facing a pretty good Royals lineup. This game, again, only on DraftKings. It's Michael Wacha going for the Royals, facing an improved and okay Cardinals lineup, but both teams kind of falling in the middle and a lowish run total compared to some of those ones before it. The Marlins at the Astros. Framber Valdez on the mound for the Astros. We always consider Framber. He's got the Marlins checked down to 3.25 implied runs. Pretty second lowest total on the board. Pretty targetable Marlins team. Pretty high-end pitcher on the right day with Framber Valdez. 4.86 implied total on the other side for the Marlins, or for the Astros, going up against Brian Hoeing. Seems like a targetable spot for some Astros bats, and they might slip under the radar a little bit given the somewhat lower overall total in that game. They're the heaviest favorite on the board. A lot of that is Framber against the Marlins, but it does lend some upside to the Astros bats, and they've got some high-end targets in that lineup that are all at relatively fair prices. So if just because they're a 15th of a run lower compared to some of those teams above 5, or 0.3 lower, whatever you want to call it, compared to some of those guys, I don't necessarily think that diminishes them by comparison all that much. And if that makes them a little bit lower owned, that's to our benefit. So one to keep in mind for sure when you're fishing around for, all right, what should my second stack be? I went with chalky Mets, or I went with chalky Red Sox, Phillies, what have you. What should my second stack be where I can get some high-end bats that might be a little bit lower owned? That could be one to keep in mind. The Pirates at the Brewers, it could be another spot like that here. We've got Martin Perez going for the Pirates, pushing a 4.75 implied total toward the pretty good Brewers lineup. And then Tobias Myers on the mound for the Brewers, 3.85 implied total for the Pirates. You could see Pittsburgh scoring a few runs. He's given up a handful of earned runs in most of his outings this season, but he hasn't been bad overall. He's a cheap pitching option. I do think he's on the value board, but at the same time, you could probably both sides that one a little bit and maybe look at some cheap Pirates. But it's not an overly compelling run total, and you do have a lot of teams in the mid-4s to work with. Another one of my absolute favorite targets is Griff Canning. He's on the mound for the hometown Angels, giving a 4.73 implied total for the Texas Rangers, showing a lot of power upside for the Rangers. Might happen to be the other team in my lineups. We'll see. But they're looking very, very good. And then a 4.37 implied total coming back the other way for the Angels. Not too bad against Michael Lorenzen. I got to say, I mean, it's at least an interesting Angels lineup, given that it's entirely comprised at this point of currently okay middle-of-the-road type players with a little bit of upside for DFS at low ownership and low prices, or former top-end, miss-the-boat kind of prospects like Castanera, who never really came through, Willie Calhoun, guys like all those different guys in there. So it can be a frisky enough lineup for the Angels. 9-run total in the game. They're on the board for a little bit of value against Michael Lorenzen. The Braves showing some power upside for sure against Slade Ciccone. Interesting lineup to consider later in the evening. 4.52 implied total for them. We know they've been up and down this season, but they're always on the board, at least for their power upside, their home run hitting ability, which is the same thing, and for a good matchup against Ciccone. And it's another team that I think, much like I was saying about the Astros, and probably even more to the point, they probably slip under the radar a little bit by comparison to some of these other teams, and I don't know necessarily that they should. Charlie Morton on the mound for the Braves facing the Diamondbacks. Similar total for the D-backs going against Charlie Morton. I'm not sure that's entirely appropriate. You can see it's a 9-run total and split basically evenly between the two. I know Charlie's had his rough spots, but he's still overall pretty effective. He's at a very good price for DFS purposes, so I think he's pretty usable here. Just depends which version of Charlie we get. And of course, which version of the Diamondbacks lineup do we get? Does Corbin Carroll do anything? And, what do we get out of guys like Lourdes Gurriel, the guys who fall into the middle? Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, pretty high-end performers most of the time. But we'll get to that one. I do think Charlie's on the board. Late in the night, we've got Logan Webb and a 7-run total against the Blue Jays to work with. And on the other side of that one, it's Chris Bassett. So two pretty high-end pitchers at the end of the night. Bassett's the more up and down between the two, in my opinion. Logan Webb at least is consistent in limiting power. It's just a matter of how many strikeouts he finds in a lot of cases. Usually very good for depth for both of these pitchers. 3.18 implied total for the Blue Jays, 3.90 for the Giants. So looks like a good pitching spot on both sides late in the evening that a lot of people are probably going to have in their lineup. So this is going to be one that will change, I think, the nature of the slate at the end of the night. So it's going to be one to sweat through the evening and stay up for the end of. Colin's here. Colin was here before. One did touchdown, sort of on the opposite side of town to where I was. All right, good. Anyone rolling with Turbo Slate? Montas Terry's pitcher for the lineup he's talking about. He certainly is not. I would not do that to myself. Yeah, that one wasn't me, Colin. I have OneDrive is off right now. Hopefully we're going to stay stable. We've been totally stable last few days. Everything's been fine. So hopefully not to jinx it. Knock on wood. But yeah, that one was on your end. Yeah, Austin Slater on Cincinnati now, as Lone Wolf was pointing out. Got traded 2 days ago for, I think, cash. Maybe a minor league pitcher or something like that. But I think it was primarily like a cash deal. Frommer, top of the board on both sites. Shockingly affordable against Miami on DraftKings at 8,300. That's just stupid. I guess technically Logan Webb is a 100th of a point higher at 18. I got to resort by DK. You can see it's slightly different from site to site. Yeah, that price is beyond stupid. I know Frommer's been a little bit shakier this year than he has in years past, but overall he's a terrific pitcher. And that's a very, very, very low-end Marlins lineup. He had 3 runs in each of his last 2 games, struck out 4, struck out 5, walked a few. 6 innings, quality start, got the win in his most recent one against Toronto. Gave up 9 hits, but he does a lot of his work on the ground, as we know. He's had a few blow-up spots through the year, but by and large, he's pitching a lot like himself. Pitching deep into a lot of these games. I don't understand how they landed at 8,300. That's ridiculous. You can probably get away with pairing, if not Frommer and Logan Webb from the top. Certainly, I would think you could pair, for certainly of the day. Most definitely, I think you could pair Frommer Valdez and, say, Chris Bassett for 8,500 in that late game. Charlie Morton at 88. On DK, you've got Waka sitting there against the Cards for just 76. You could go Sevy. There's a lot of ways to build on DK today. It's a value-driven slate on DraftKings. Just looking at some of these pitcher pricing. By the way, hit that like button, hit the subscribe as we get started in actually breaking down the slate. It's going to be a complex one, and especially with all these DK values, there's going to be a lot to talk through here, but definitely show a little bit of love because I'm doing this instead of sitting here watching the first 4 Christopher Reeve Supermans all in a row. By the time I'm done, we're going to be in the middle of like 4, the beginning of 4, The Quest for Peace, and honestly, who wants to watch that one? Superman 2 is on right now, but I can't sit here and watch it. They're on the moon. The 3 Kryptonians are on the moon. They're flying toward Earth right now. Houston. Anyway, I love doing this. I wouldn't do anything else. But hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out our pals over at acemind.io for all your sim and optimization needs. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, 20% off your first month. Pretty solid offer. So continuing down the board, between Logan Webb, Frommer Valdez at the top, we've got 2 great options, fairly reliable aces. Webb is appropriately priced, 10-1, 9,800 across sites. Toronto's fairly low strikeout, but Webb is capable of finding his usual, 1-4, 1-5. I can't get this camera where I want it. The cat jumped up on the back of the monitor and knocked the whole thing forward earlier. Fortunately, I was sitting here to catch it, but I feel like everything's slightly off. I've also got a thingy here. Anyway, enough maintenance. So it's just a little bit of limitation by the low strikeout Blue Jays, but Webb talented enough to get through it and certainly could give us 7 clean innings in that one in a good pitcher's park. Pivetta, a little bit threatened by the hitting conditions, certainly. Damn it. Now I'm hyper-focused on those. Definitely threatened a little bit by the pitching conditions and some quality Oakland bats all of a sudden, but a high-end option for sure with some extreme strikeout upside. 9,000, not inappropriate. 96, second most expensive pitcher on the DraftKings slate. You could argue with that, but it's a terrific matchup on paper if you take the ballpark, the hitting conditions out of the equation, and he definitely has enough talent, enough upside to get through that situation. Bassett, like him at the end of the night, 8,500 on DraftKings is very appealing. 9,100 on FanDuel. Totally works for me. Charlie, 87 and 88, fits into a lot of different lineup combinations with that slight price difference between him and, say, Bassett against San Francisco, Pivetta against Oakland. Save a couple $100 and you can pay for a lot of different interesting combinations on both sites, 87 and 88. Actually, on DK, he's 300 more than Bassett, and he's 500 more than Fromber, which is just silly. But he's very much on the board in that quality mid-range of just combining a lot of those guys. Waka's in orange because he's not on the FanDuel slate, so don't let me talk about him over there. That price is from the early slate. 7,600 on DraftKings definitely makes him appealing as a value, better than a dart throw. It's a gettable, it's an improved, but definitely still gettable St. Louis lineup. We'll see who's actually in the lineup, too. Second game of a doubleheader, so you don't know who's necessarily even going to be in the lineup. Might be a diminished version of an already just kind of middle-of-the-road type lineup. So seems like a good opportunity for Waka at a very low price. If you don't like him, Sevy's right there at 7,500. We bounce back on FanDuel with him at 8,200. It's a gettable enough Nationals team, but they have signs of life, of course, and a few very interesting hitters. We'll see where they're priced. Guys like C.J. Abrams, who was at a mind-boggling price yesterday, despite being very, very, very good. We saw how that compared to some of the other shortstops on the slate. So we'll look through that again. But Sevy's playable. He's been shaky. He's been up and down this year, but those are good enough prices relative to the other guys, and probably just kind of middle-of-the-board type ownership. Christopher Sanchez, terrific pitcher, good results, but probably, again, overperforming his talent, overperforming his overall stuff, and just a terrible matchup at a high price. You're not getting any kind of discount, really, for facing the Dodgers. The results are probably better than the pitcher in the long run, but he's been very good. You can't argue with the quality. It's just not an overly appealing DFS spot. Probably won't be that popular, though. Tobias Myers, I do think we could get away with 74, 77. He hasn't been completely bad. Has okay strikeout stuff, a decent enough matchup against Pittsburgh, and he's just cheap. 74 on FanDuel makes a lot of other things work. If Charlie doesn't do it for you at 87, you can take another big chunk out of that and pay for another bat by dipping down to Myers. You're obviously diminished a little bit, but you do pick up a little bit of a better opponent, so there's a trade-off there, and it doesn't project poorly. 77 on DraftKings. He fits in with guys like Waka and Severino. He's at least part of that conversation. There's enough there. Michael Lorenzen, I like a little bit less, 8,100 on both sites. I do think he's playable. He's projected right in the mid-range, but there is a little bit of a gap between him and, say, Myers, Sanchez, the guys immediately above him. It is a good enough matchup. There are definitely strikeouts in that Angels lineup. But again, they are becoming maybe a little bit more interesting, just given some of those guys got to be able to hit a little bit. Kevin Stone against the Phillies. No, thank you. I'd just much rather have Phillies bats with them drawing a big 5+ total. 8,800, 9,300 doesn't feel overly appropriate price-wise either. The DraftKings price especially feels really high for that situation. 88 on FanDuel if you wanted to mix and match if you're building 150 lineups. He's there, but it's not that appealing. Why would you want to target Philly with him? Frankie Montas, again, I can make a strong argument for Colorado bats there, but he's very, very cheap against a Colorado team on the road that typically we are looking to target with pitching. Rockies on the road against a righty, and Frankie Montas is right-handed, so that old mantra still does fit here. So you could go to Montas, but might be a little bit both-sided. The price is very effective, though. 72 on FanDuel, even cheaper than Tobias Myers, 7,000 on DraftKings. No real reason outside of the conditions to think that he couldn't succeed over, say, 6 innings. JP Sears, tough circumstances for him with Boston in a massive total. Again, he does find success from time to time, but he also runs into a lot of trouble, and that Red Sox lineup has been pretty good this season. 7,000, 6,500. At least he's not expensive. You're definitely discounted, I think, even from where he would be in a neutral park. You're getting a bit of a discount on him, probably on recent results, and then matchup and hitting environment. Ciccone against the Braves, I feel like we're taking a little bit more upside from the Braves lineup. He's had his spots this season where he's been cheap, and we've been able to get to him a little bit, but not an overly high-end pitcher and not a great matchup. Griff Canning, just a target for me with Texas bats, 6,800 across sites. Patrick Corbin, a bigger target for me with Mets bats, 6,600, 5,500. He's in the bargain bin, but I think he actually just kind of fell through the mesh and is on the floor collecting dust and getting a lot of mold and grime on him underneath it. He's just been sitting down there for years now, and nobody notices because they don't move the bargain bin and sweep the floor underneath. That's what he is at this point, so just don't go there. Gordon Graceffo, FO on DraftKings for 73. We're probably not there. It's a good Kansas City lineup on the other side, pending who is in it, of course. He is a high-end prospect overall, but he might end up being, in the long run, a better real-life pitcher than a DFS pitcher. Came up with the reputation of being like a soft-tossing control command type guy. He has improved his velo over the last year plus, but still doesn't really fit a high-end profile. I think he could be an effective enough, four-starter, but kind of a back-end type guy without a ton of strikeout potential. So I don't think we're going there at 73 on DraftKings. Doesn't project out great and not on the FanDuel slate. Martin Perez, I think, is just a target for Brewers bats. Kyle Freeland is a target for Reds bats. And Brian Hoeing, bringing up the bottom, is a target for Astros bats. Dodgers and the Phils. See if we got any lineups in. We do have the Dodgers. So to put some numbers on what I've been saying about Christopher Sanchez at the top of the Phillies rotation here, I mean, it's difficult to really argue with at this point because over 17 starts, 97 and a third. He's got a 2.96 ERA with a 3.11 xFIP underneath it. 10.4% swinging strike rate is good, just a 6.8% walk rate. But you can see some of what I'm talking about as far as DFS quality, and especially for the price in this matchup. Just a 20.6% strikeout rate, despite a decent swinging strike rate. Doesn't throw enough strikes overall with that CSW. He doesn't get damaged at all for home runs, so that's where some of the quality for limiting run creation comes from. 5.2% barrels on a 0.6 degree average launch angle. We're talking about Fromber type of quality, Logan Webb type of quality. We've got a few of these types on the slate, and they're some of our higher end pitchers. But among those guys, he's got the lower end strikeout stuff overall. So there is a little bit of artificial limitation from that, and then obviously the extreme upside of the Los Angeles Dodgers on the other side. Even with this version of the Dodgers bottom end, they're all right-handed for one thing. With the extreme superstars up at the top, several very low strikeout guys among this mixed bag of quality at the bottom of the lineup, it's just not a great target. If he was in the high, say they discounted him by $500 on FanDuel. 85 on DraftKings. Take 500 even off on both sites. He becomes more interesting. I just think he's limited by a lack of strikeout stuff. And you can see that a little bit in the Stuff Plus rating. 92.32 is significantly below average. But he does come out here and pitch deep into ball games a lot of the time. He definitely gives you clean innings. 2 starts ago against the low-end Marlins, he went complete game shutout, 3-hitter. Struck out 9 over 9 innings. Just won an inning, but it was a nice total in the end. But he had to go 9 to get there. In his most recent outing at Wrigley, had a disaster. 7 earned runs on 7 hits. Struck out just 3, walked 3, gave up a home run. That was against the Cubs. Imagine what the Dodgers could do to him. 7 innings apiece against the Diamondbacks and the Padres. 2 starts before that. Went clean over 7, 3 hits against the Diamondbacks, but only struck out 4. Didn't walk anybody. Struck out 5 Padres, gave up 1 walk, 1 earned run on 6 hits. Those are 2 effective starts, quality starts, got the win in both of them. Again, he is effective. He is finding good results. It's just, do you really want to tangle with the Dodgers for these prices with a low-end strikeout pitcher? I don't. Gavin Stone on the other side has been similar. He's been effective as well. 3.03 ERA, but a 4.11 xFIP is a little, betrays his ERA a little bit more than Sanchez's very good xFIP does. Again, Sanchez just a better limiter of runs than he is like a high-end DFS guy. And the same is true to a lesser extent for Stone, as revealed by that 4.11 xFIP. 11.5% swinging strikes is good, but similar to the other guy, 26.7% CSW off of that is not great. 7.4% walk rate is higher than Sanchez while still being manageable. 19.3% strikeouts is not overly targetable for DFS. He's also just limiting power with allowing or inducing medium and soft contact. 33% hard hit rate, 87.8 miles an hour exit velo are both very good. A moderate launch angle. That's like mid-level type launch angle, but just 1.85% home runs. He's been missing barrels. So he's been effective. But exactly the same as going the other way. Do you really want to target the Phillies with Gavin Stone on a deep pitching slate for 9,300, 8,800 across sites? I don't think it's really there for either of these guys. There are better spots. Could you get 6 good innings, a quality start, and a win out of one or the other of them? Absolutely. Are you more likely to get 4 or 5 earned runs on a good day and 3 to 5 strikeouts, and maybe they don't get the win or the quality start? It's dicey. Not that really leads me to bats on either side of this one, though. You can see a little bit more just extreme upside from the 2 star power hitters at the top of the Dodgers lineup, but then it immediately diminishes as far as premium contact upside and home run upside go. And it's similar on the Phillies side. Even Bryce is below the magic number, not far below, 9.15, but only Schwartz is above it. Both of these pitchers have been good at limiting runs, have been good at limiting power. So it's a less appealing spot than normal for both of these offenses, even though they're both high-end offenses. It is a good hitting environment, though. I could see this game, despite these pitchers' ability to limit runs, just like with Sanchez in his last start, he gave up 7 runs. You could absolutely see one of these 2 guys melt down. So across a bunch of lineups, I definitely think there's room for Phillies and Dodgers. In one lineup, neither one of these teams is a priority today. Stone, by the way, in his most recent start, 3 innings against the Diamondbacks, 4 earned runs on 7 hits, struck out 3, walked 3, gave up a home run. He also had a complete game shutout the start before that, though. That came against the White Sox. 4-hitter, 7 strikeouts. So both of these guys are capable of very good games, but 2 tough matchups. Ohtani at the top of the board, 66-48. It's difficult to take anything away from Shohei Ohtani, even with a good ground ball pitcher on the mound. 28 home runs, 21 stolen bases, a 321 ISO, 188 WRC+. It's obviously spectacular, but he's very expensive in a more difficult than normal type of hitting spot, given the pitcher on the mound. The hitting conditions, again, in the ballpark are appealing. So get one in the air, and it could get out of this ballpark in a hurry. Teoscar Hernandez, 51-35, effectively priced if you're targeting Chris Sanchez for some reason. He's definitely a part of your plans. 19 home runs for him at 223 ISO, 126 WRC+. Followed in the lineup by Freddie Freeman. No Will Smith today, I'm noticing. We get Austin Barnes down the bottom of the lineup. But Freddie's right there, 57-39. Even lefty-lefty doesn't really matter for Freddie. 299, 403, 501, a 203 ISO, 155 WRC+. Still a very strong contender for the 3rd spot in Dodger stacks. But now we're getting pretty expensive, stacking all 3 of those guys in a lineup against, again, a pretty good ground ball pitcher who limits runs. Andy Pages, upside from the right side of the plate, 4,000, 2,800 is not expensive. 146 ISO. We've taken a dip in the power output over the last, say, 7,500 plate appearances or so. Down to just 100 WRC+. Been sitting on 8 home runs, I think, for a minute now. Memory serves. So it's an expected dip for a guy who just got called up at the beginning of the season, or after the first month of the season. But he's still very cheap and still does have that premium right-handed power upside. And even with the dip, 10.6% barrels, 40.9% hard hits. Not a bad option if you're targeting Chris Sanchez. Miguel Rojas, Miguel Vargas, Chris Taylor, Enrique Hernandez, and Austin Barnes to round out the Dodgers lineup. That is a gigantic grab bag of meh. Rojas is performing probably the best among them. 182 plate appearances. He's 18 points above average for run creation. Vargas has just made 57 plate appearances. His numbers are better, 294, 351, 549, and he's created runs 51% better than average. 3 home runs apiece for those guys. Rojas is a shortstop on DK for $3,800. Vargas is a $3,200 outfielder. He's more of just another outfielder, but I don't know that you necessarily want Rojas at shortstop in terms of the global slate. It's easier to use those guys on FanDuel where they've got multi-position, and all 4 of those guys have multi-position. As you can see, a weird little structure there, little hourglass looking thing. So any one of those guys is perfectly fine to mix in to help lower the costs of the guys above them. My ideal version of that would probably be Pages plus one of these guys. And you can even throw Austin Barnes into that mix, honestly. It's not an ideal spot to grab your catcher from hitting 9th here, but he is very, very cheap. Hasn't done much with his 87 plate appearances. But anyway, the ideal version would be to get Pages plus one of these guys if you're stacking Dodgers. But I think that's probably the approach that basically everybody takes. So given at least a little positional flex around those two, and certainly, damn it, and obviously over here on FanDuel with all this positional flex, I do think it would probably differentiate Dodger stacks. Not that that's a huge concern in this spot where they won't be all that popular, but further differentiation through skipping Pajas and combining two of these guys and just getting creative with how you click it together. It's one way to go. If you're stacking Phillies in an equally bumpy kind of a spot, Schwarbs, Turner, Harper, kind of obvious priorities off the top. Schwarbs has 17 long balls on the season. That's what we pay him for. That's it. Just a 194 ISO. That could definitely be higher. 11.7% barrels is way down from his 16.4 last year, but 54.1% hard hits is actually up. That resembles 2 years ago, the best combined season when he had 20.1% barrels and 54.4% hard hits. He's obviously a big strikeout target, but he draws a ton of walks. He's a very, very good run creator. So even when he's not hitting home runs, he can still put points into your lineup in other ways. 374 on base, a 132 WRC plus. So he's not a home run or nothing kind of a power hitter, and obviously an ideal spot in the top of the Phillies lineup. Turner rolling through 235 plate appearances this year, 156 WRC plus, 8 homers, 11 steals, 387 on base. It's been tremendous. Very good premium contact profile. A worthy way to spend your shortstop salary at a very high level. Just not the greatest matchup again for DFS output on most days. Harper back in the lineup as well, 5,600, 3,900. A little bit of a discount on DraftKings for both him and Schwarbs. 12.3% barrels, 47% hard hits, 20 home runs, 275 ISO. Superstar Bryce Harper for a little bit of a discount at first base. Obviously a priority if you're stacking fills. Alec Boehm, as long as he has third base eligibility and you don't have to positional conflict with Harper at 5,300, belongs in your Philly stacks. 11 home runs, 188 ISO, 129 WRC plus, having a very strong season with the bat at 293, 344, 481. Very affordable at third or first on FanDuel. You can obviously put both those guys together and still get a different third baseman on that slate with the util spot. And he's pretty affordable at 34. That's not a bad price for him. Bryson Stott, 49-29 across sites. If he's in the lineup, 6 home runs, 21 stolen bases, and 97 WRC plus. We've dipped below average there. The ISO isn't great. The power output hasn't been great, but he's getting on at a pretty good clip at 331. Has the ability to get involved, steal bases, has a better run creation ability than what he's shown over the full season this year. Castellanos for 42-28, as we know, has significant ceiling. Definitely can get involved with the home run ball. 12 home runs on the season in 382 plate appearances. Not an extreme power hitter, but he's capable of going deep. He's capable of getting more involved in terms of average and on base than he's done this season. Overall, it's been kind of a down year. 234, 291, 387, 91 WRC plus, 154 ISO. But does have a lot of upside for the salary from the right side of the plate if you're stacking this Phillies team. Brendan Marsh, we'll see if he's... he should be in the lineup. Forgot it was a righty on the mound. 4,000, 2,800. 8 home runs, 11 stolen bases, creating runs 20% better than average. A very strong target when he's the same price as Castellanos on FanDuel. He's 200 cheaper on DraftKings. It's definitely upside there. 8.3% barrels and 50% hard hits is pretty appealing as well. A lot of strikeouts, more of a strikeout or nothing kind of a guy than say Kyle Schwarber is. But that's not even true this year, actually. 350 on base, drawing a decent walk percentage. So neither of those guys is all that much of a home run or bust. I feel like Marsh falls into that bucket a little bit more often, though. Garrett Stubbs is cheap, 2,800, 2,300. That said, he hasn't really produced much over 106. Johan Rojas, a mix and match part, a little bit of stolen base upside, but getting on at a 271 clip this year. So really, this is 4 sides where anything could be playable, anything could come through, but nothing is overly appealing here, given all the different matchups that all 4 of these things are facing. So this game just kind of falls by the wayside, which is weird with the Phillies at a big total. 5.13 implied total. I don't know. They rank out fine, but given what Stone can do on the mound in terms of limiting the power upside, in terms of what he's done successfully limiting runs and everything, just feels like that one's getting a little bit of credit from the hitting environment. And again, that is a good cause in a lot of cases to go to these kind of teams. So if I had to rank it, I'd probably say hitting over pitching in both directions and say Phillies bats, then Dodgers bats. And then it's probably Chris Sanchez and then Gavin Stone. Paul Goldschmidt home run. But yeah, I kind of rank everything down in this one, just given the ability for both of these pitchers to potentially limit the long ball a little bit. But the ballpark might beat it. Oh, good. My ad block has been updated. That's what we need to be doing in the background while we're doing the show. What do you guys think of this one? Are you targeting this one based on that run total? Mamba's here. What's up, Mamba? Stevenson, best pitcher option. Home run odds very high. New York Mets looking very juicy. Yeah, I love the Mets today. Hang on one second. Let me yell at the dog. Hey, what are you doing? Come here. Can you just lie down, please? Come on, lie down, pal. Joker's here. His daily show interruption. Mamba thinks the Phillies are going to score 23 runs. All right. That's a lot. Again, I don't think that like Gavin Stone is any kind of ace, and especially the way he's priced, I'm not all that drawn to him for DFS. You can see where he projects and how he projects comparable to everybody else on the board. He's here. It's not like he's a target for me, but again, given what he's pretty decent at. For the season, his earned run high is 5. So that would be 18 more runs than he's allowed at any point this season. Not that that's necessarily predictive, but he has been good at limiting runs. That's what he does well, which is kind of what you want in a pitcher. I don't know. I don't really see it. He hasn't even honestly been giving up that many hits or walks. What's his whip? 1.20 whip. He's been on a stretch of, outside of the rough one against Arizona there, he was on a stretch of pretty decent games. Yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling the bats a little bit less maybe than Vegas is, but again, it is easy to get to because there's super high-end players through both of the top ends of these lineups. But between the two, I'll definitely lean Phillies bats, put them on the top of the pyramid here. Phillies bats followed by Dodgers bats, and specifically the Dodgers top end. And then Chris Sanchez above Gavin Stone, but I really don't like either pitcher in these matchups for the price. And if anything, if you want to buy into the Vegas totals, then Vegas should push you off the pitching. A's and the Red Sox. See if we got the A's. We do. So JP Sears just looking like a target in this one. Again, he can have his days. But overall this season, a 4.74 ERA, a 5.13 xFIP, a 16.7% strikeout rate. None of that is appealing. And he's giving up a 9.7% barrel rate on a 17.8 degree average launch with 39.7%. Call it almost 40% hard hits. 89.4 miles an hour of exit velo. It's only amounted to 3.19% home runs. You could easily say that he's gotten a little bit lucky to limit home runs as much as he has. And that's still not extreme for limiting it. On the other side, you can see Nick Pivetta has had an even bigger problem. 4.68% home runs this year on nearly 10% barrels. He's also a fly ball trajectory pitcher out of habit. And the premium contact, the exit velo, the hard hits aren't terrible. So maybe some happenstance baked into that number, but it's been problematic for him over 13 starts this year. You can see the difference between where Stuff Plus measures their actual pitches, though. The quality, you can see it in the underlying numbers with the xFIP differential. Pivetta's got a decent 4.06 ERA and a strong 3.51 xFIP that's a half a run lower. Sears has a bumpy 4.74 ERA and an xFIP that's a half a run higher at 5.13, which is atrocious. He doesn't induce swinging strikes. He's got a high xFIP. Pivetta, when he gets into trouble and he doesn't walk too many guys, can punch his way out of trouble with an 11% swinging strike rate. So one of these pitchers is clearly much better than the other one. One of them is usable, and that's Nick Pivetta. That said, it is, again, a situation where this is a good hitting environment. The Red Sox are drawing a big total because of the matchup, but also pushed by the hitting environment. That's why the run total's up so high. So the A's do have a little bit of that going for them as well, and you can see some of it working its way through in the home run model, if nothing else. So I think Pivetta is playable, but not safe. I think he's in the mix for a bunch of shares if you're building 150 lineups, but he's not a high priority option if you're building 20 lineups. I think there's just a bunch of better ways to go. Definitely a tournament play because he'll probably be a little bit under-owned compared to what he should be, with a bunch of better options on the board at similar prices. And he's got a high ceiling. So he's a good tournament play to mix in, but probably in enough danger to at least give up a few runs that I don't know how much I prioritize it. Most recent outing was a good one against Miami. Similarly low-end team, 7 innings. 1 hit, no runs, 10 strikeouts. Start before that against the Padres team that's middle of the road. 5 earned runs on 7 hits, 4 strikeouts, gave up a homer, walked 1. Start before that at the Reds, 4 1/3, 3 earned on 6 hits, gave up 2 homers, 5 strikeouts. Faced Toronto, went 7, gave up 3 earned on 9 hits, 2 home runs, just 4 strikeouts. 4 earned runs over 4 against Philly. Struck out just 4, walked 4. Good start before that one against Atlanta. Struck out 9, 1 hitter, no runs. That's not the best stretch of June starts. That's the last start in May through the first start in July. It is a good opponent. It is a good matchup for Pivetta. But I think he's one of the more threatened high-end pitchers. Let's put it that way. He ranks 3rd on the board. I mean, the projections say it all. There's a clear gap between him and these guys above him. And there are a lot of similar options at a variety of prices below him. If you're looking at A's bats, which I definitely think you can, I think they're downright appealing again. They weren't the highest scoring team last night, but they definitely had a good day. And they check in at much lower ownership in a good hitting environment and at significantly lower cost than not only their opponent, but just a lot of other teams on the board. They've got, if nothing else, power upside. I think it's pretty undeniable. Several guys well into the double digits for home runs in the lineup. Rooker and Langoliers are their 2 best overall power bats. Gelof's on a little bit of a tear. He's up to 10 home runs and 11 stolen bases, kind of coming around. J.J. Bleday's got 11 home runs on the season. No Soderstrom in the lineup today, which sucks. He's another good young bat for this team with a lot of power upside. But you get an effective Andujar. It's a good enough lineup that I do think at very cheap prices and no popularity, they're worth consideration. Bleday just 38-28 across sites. Again, 11 home runs, a 185 ISO, 9% above average for run creation. Not the best option in the world, but for a very cheap price. Lefty bat against the version of Pivetta that's given up a bunch of premium contact and power. He's a low strikeout, high walk option as well, so he can get involved a little bit. Good way to start off his stack. Miguel Andujar, 3,900 in the outfield. He's got first base eligibility, which is interesting on FanDuel. At least it makes it a little bit easier to stack these guys because you don't have to pile up 3 outfielders in your lineup. That's the case on DraftKings. Bleday, Andujar, and Rooker, all 3 just outfield. So that's a little annoying because typically you do want to have 1 outfield spot at least available when you go to your second stack. Just, out of everybody that you're stacking, odds are with 3 outfielders available from all these teams, one of the guys you want from any team is going to be an outfielder. So I don't love jamming 3 outfielders from the same team. That said, those are 3 very appealing bats if you're stacking up this A's team. And honestly, they're 3 mandatory bats if you're stacking up this A's team in a lot of ways. Andujar over 165, slashing 299, 327, 408. He's created runs 12% better than average. We know there's a little bit of power in that bat. He hasn't really driven the ball all that effectively with any kind of consistency this year, but he's been putting the ball in play a lot. 14.5% strikeouts, 4.2% walks. So a lot of balls in play from the 2-hitter. I like the option for a very cheap price. Again, probably prefer being able to mix it up a little bit with first base eligibility on FanDuel. Rooker for just 5,000, 3,500. 35 is probably correct on FanDuel. 5 is probably about the same. 16.6% barrels, 50.8% hard hits, 18 homers, 261 ISO. Langoliers right behind him with 17 homers, 231 ISO. But you can see the difference for one in their price. $1,000 price difference on DK, $500 price difference on FanDuel. You can also see it in their WRC Plus and their slash line, 209, 257, 440. It's a wide margin between him and Rooker at 282, 360, 542. Rooker's been a really good hitter this year. But Langoliers, for a cheap catcher, with home run upside, with the wind blowing out to left field in Fenway again, we saw how that worked out. Very cheap at catcher hitting cleanup today against a gettable version of Pivetta. So priority bat if you're stacking A's, and a playable one-off catcher if you're not stacking A's. Lawrence Butler for 2,300 has been hitting the ball very, very hard. He's 23 on FanDuel as well. 5 home runs, 5 stolen bases, and 175 plate appearances. Just a 133 ISO, but look at all the premium contact. That's what I'm interested in. He strikes out a ton. He can draw some walks, at least this year. Didn't really last year. But he's more between the two. I'd say more high, a little bit of home run upside, but high strikeout potential to put some zeros in your life. But very, very cheap given the power. It's just another outfielder in the mix there. That's where it becomes interesting on FanDuel. If you wanted to go to 3 outfielders or use the util spot, obviously you can make different combinations. Geloff, again, kind of surging. Not that you'd notice at 3,300 at second base, 2,800 on FanDuel at second base. They haven't noticed either. 6.23 in the home run models, not bad. 10 homers, 11 steals. Just an 87 WRC plus. Long way to go. Still just a 271 on base. But a player who was more effective last year, 267, 337, 504, had a 133 WRC plus, 14 homers, 14 steals, and a 237 ISO. We get back anything approaching that, and that's what he's been over the last week, 10 days. There's a lot of quality there. Nevin for 25 on both sides, multi-position on both sides is interesting enough. 6 home runs on the season, a 150 ISO, right at league average for run creation. But another guy, a lot of premium contact available. Not uninteresting. Brett Harris, Max Schumann at the bottom of the lineup. Both roughly average type run creators, if that. 5 home runs and 8 steals for Schumann at the bottom of the lineup for 23-27. Not an ideal shortstop to use. Harris, not an ideal third baseman. A little bit more flex, at least, for Schumann on FanDuel, but we've got enough of that up through the top of the lineup. So if you're stacking A's, your priorities are like 1 through 6. And they do fall into the value board, at least, for stacking. On the Red Sox side, definitely a targetable spot. Rob Refsnyder, everybody's favorite Red Sox, hitting second again, as he typically does when there's a lefty on the mound. Appealing enough for 3,800, 2,600 across sites, 303, 399, 454, and a lot of success against lefties in his track record. Back to being more of what he's supposed to be, just a platoon-based utility guy. But when he's in the lineup in this role, I do think he's usable. That said, everybody else around him is probably higher priority. Jarren Duran for 59-37 is having a tremendous season across 418 plate appearances, 20% better than average for run creation. 10 homers. He's also got 10 triples in there, 21 stolen bases. He's just been outrageous. Really, really good player. Tyler O'Neill for 53-34. You can see the 13 plus in the home run model. 16 homers on the season, a 255 ISO. Outpaced so far by Rafi Devers with 21 homers, 298 ISO for Rafi, 159 WRC plus. All 3 of those players have been absolutely tremendous. They're high priority options in this Red Sox lineup. And honestly, they're high priced. They're not easy to reach necessarily, but with all the pitching value on this slate, with some differentiated hitting value on this slate, and then a lot of cheap options to go with those 3 hitters in this Red Sox lineup, they're not all that difficult to reach either. Connor Wong for 3,900 for one thing on DraftKings. His price went down since I was raving about it yesterday. It's almost insulting. Connor Wong is slashing 309, 366, 438 with a 123 WRC plus. He's hit 7 home runs. He made better contact last year, sure, but I don't think that's what DraftKings bases their prices on. I don't understand why he's so cheap. Hitting 5th basically every day. Hitting 5th as a righty against the lefty with the wind blowing out to left field in Fenway Park. What more do we need at catcher? He is absurdly cheap. He should be ridiculously popular on this slate. If he's not, fire away. Even if he is, fire away. But if he's not, just mash that gas pedal down. For 2,800 on FanDuel, just pretend like he's their first baseman. As I continue to say, he's very cheap on FanDuel as well. Romy Gonzalez gives you 4 positions on FanDuel. You can mix and match your way through that. 71 plate appearances. He's right-handed as well. He's second base and shortstop for a cheap price on DraftKings. 286, 352, 413, a 111 WRC+. Plus. Is an effective enough correlated scoring option. Yoshida, lefty-lefty, is not totally ideal, but a good hitter overall. This season, it's been diminished somewhat, but he's missed a lot of time. I feel like he's a hitter where the numbers will normalize to basically what we saw last year by the end. He won't reach the same counting stat totals, but I do think he's going to round out to around the same type of numbers. 94 WRC plus right now, but very affordable for his bat. Jamie Westbrook, 2,100, 2,000. If you need a super, super cheap option at second base, he's at least there. Has 1 home run in 24 plate appearances. No previous track record that way. I thought we had some. Is there anything appealing about him at mid price? He's 29. I know there's... maybe not. This is the first major league experience. In... 2023 with the Yanks, 21 home runs, with the Yankees AAA affiliate, 21 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 294, 400, 496. That's probably why I was thinking we had track record on him, because we were with the Yankees for that. 202 ISO. Year before, 11 home runs over 499 plate appearances with the Tigers AAA affiliate. So a little bit of power upside. I mean, nobody's idea of a solid major leaguer necessarily. But against a lefty, a fairly weak lefty at that, at an ideal position to take an extreme discount in price, Westbrook's not completely awful. He's got a killer barrel rate in his 24 plate appearances. It's probably like 4 batted ball events. But I can make the argument for that cheaper price. Sedan Rafaela for 4,000, 3,000. Scoring a lot of runs, driving some in. Just an 86 WRC plus, a weak on base percentage. But the counting stats across the board are good. That makes him valuable enough when he's this cheap with positional flex on both sites. So just based on this, nothing about like the real baseball profile outside of the counting stats, but the counting stats are good enough to mix him in. So Red Sox from top to bottom, and especially if people go away from some of these lower end hitters, primarily cost based with a little power upside there, cheap enough with positional flex there, cheap enough with positional flex here. Absurdly cheap and really appealing at catcher/first base. Really like the upside for the Red Sox. Again, with a monster total, they're going to be popular. This isn't a secret, but it's these guys that are going to be popular. Diminishing popularity through those guys, and definitely you at least want to mix and match your way through those guys. Red Sox bats way up top, followed by the A's bats, then Nick Pivetta, and JP Sears a little bit dicey. Don't think you play JP Sears. Rockies and the Reds, both these lineups have been in for a minute. I see no reason in the world that anyone would be considering Kyle Freeland, even at 5,000, 6,200 across sites. Even at price, there's just no appeal whatsoever. 6.62 ERA, a 4.90 xFIP, giving up a monstrous amount of premium contact, despite just a 2.45% home run rate. As a result, he's gotten a little lucky there. 12.9% strikeout rate. There's no DFS appeal here. Against a deadly Reds team in their home run home run happy home park. Salvage that one. It's just a good spot for Reds bats. They're showing an extreme total, 5.42 implied runs, one of the highest on the board. On the other side, Frankie Montas, we do have to talk about a little bit because it is the Rockies against a righty on the road. 4.19 ERA for Frankie, but another pitcher more than half a run higher in the xFIP. 1.32 whip on almost a 10% walk rate. 18.6% strikeout rate is not overly appealing. 8.2% barrels on a 15-degree average launch. 41.2% hard hits. Probably gotten a little bit lucky to not have a few more home runs, pushing that up a little bit. Sub 10% swinging strike rate and a really, really low 23.8% CSW. A lot of that aligns with previous seasons where, that's limited this one. Really limited CSW despite a much higher swinging strike rate that season. He was a better pitcher that year, 4.05 ERA with a 3.61 xFIP. Similar barrels, similar launch, but better at inducing weak contact that season. Lower walk that season. He's had his moments, but they were a while ago at this point. Over 16 starts this season, we've got how many quality starts? Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 6 out of 16 are quality starts. It's not completely awful as a ratio, but it's not the biggest draw in the world. Earned run high of just 5. He gave up 5 over 2 innings to Seattle way back in April. In recent starts, 2 earned runs over 5 innings against the Yanks, struck out 4, walked 3, 2 home runs allowed, struck out 5, walked 3 against St. Louis over 6 innings, just 1 earned run on 2 hits. 6 innings against Boston, 2 earned runs on 5 hits, struck out 4, walked 1, gave up a homer. That Boston game was a home start. That was in this ballpark. It was okay. Again, 2 earned runs, home run allowed, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. Obviously, that's a much better Red Sox team. I'm just thinking about the home road. A lot of his better starts on the season appear to have come on the road. Most of the instances in which he gave up, 3 or 4 earned runs are in home starts. I just think he's a very gettable pitcher, but he's also cheap, right? Any of those concerns as far as whether you can play Frankie Montas are entirely taken up by these cheap prices. That accounts for him not being all that good. That accounts for the Rockies having a bit of an improved lineup. That accounts for the ballpark. It accounts for the hitting conditions. It accounts for the 15, 20 mile an hour wind blowing out. All of that is baked into the price. So yes, you can absolutely play Frankie Montas. What's appealing about it is I think you can get to the Rockies on the other side. Cheap, low owned, another appealing stack. Them and the A's, we're going to continue to go back to. I think those are among the more interesting low end teams. Not that they're good, but individuals pile up to, create interesting DFS situations. 4 guys into the double digits in this lineup for home run upside. Ezekiel Tovar's got 12. Ryan McMahon's got 14. Brenton Doyle is absolutely tremendous. He has 13 with 20 stolen bases. Talia's got 11. He's been terrible at everything else, but he's absolutely got power. Starting with the $4,300, $2,800 shortstop, that's pretty cheap. I know he's down to an 87 WRC plus, a 172 ISO. The quality's come and gone this season, but he puts effective enough bat on ball. He's got a little bit of power. He's got a little bit of speed. Needs to get on base more, certainly, definitely. 3.3% walk isn't going to cut it for the leadoff role. A 292 on base definitely isn't going to cut it from the leadoff role. But he's a playable shortstop, and more so if you're stacking up a bunch of Rockies lineups. He's a priority if you're stacking a bunch of them. If you're building one Rockies lineup, you don't necessarily need him because shortstop is a high-end position where there are a lot of star caliber players available. Brendan Rodgers for 37-26, 5 home runs on the season, and 86 WRC plus. It's been effective in terms of putting the ball in play and hitting for average a little bit. Needs to start translating into a little bit better run creation, a little bit better power upside, but 44.5% hard hits gives me a little bit of faith that it will. So a playable part for a very cheap price at second base. McMahon, 4,600, 3,000, making better contact than he ever has, 12.6% barrels, 54% hard hits, translating into a pretty good 388 plate appearances. There's been dips, but overall, it's been a very high-quality season out of Ryan McMahon. Lefty bat against a mediocre righty pitcher. Definitely think there's upside there, but 7.64 in the home run model. It's not like he's crashing through the top of the ceiling. Crashing through the ceiling, not the top of the ceiling. If anything, you would be crashing through the bottom of the ceiling. And then I guess the top of the ceiling, depending on how thick your ceiling is. Elias Diaz, 3,900, 2,600. Continues to be a very appealing catcher in the cleanup spot. I won't harp on it too much, but the triple slash is fantastic. 96 WRC plus, just 5 home runs, just a 123 ISO, but a good hitter, a guy who puts the ball in play a ton, and he's always cheap, and he's always low owned, and he hits in the cleanup spot. Doyle, did I click that one from this profile? Let's see. Brenton Doyle's July per tweet that Underdog sent out earlier. And we're only 10 days into July, but his July so far, 577 average, 656 on base with 6 homers and 11 RBIs. It's pretty solid. If you had Brenton Doyle on your fantasy team this past week, you've done pretty well. 4,500, not that DraftKings has noticed. 3,100, not that FanDuel's noticed. 13 homers, 20 steals, a 113 WRC plus, a 187 ISO, a very, very solid bat, a very solid contributor of counting stats across the board. It's just a stat stuffer type of a player, and he's not at all expensive. JK for 3,000, 2,300, a lot less appealing. Just kind of a mix and match part in the outfield. Talia, again, just monster premium contact, 16.5% barrels, 50.5% hard hits. That is pretty real. He is definitely a home run or bust kind of a candidate, though. 187, 254, 432, 74 WRC plus. You're just getting your 11 home runs in 173 plate appearances with a very good ISO, a lot of premium contact. For the money, it's a good play DFS-wise. It's just know that you, in a lot of cases, will be building a zero in your lineup. Nolan Jones, given what he did last year, still has a lot of appeal. Given the 48% hard hits over 184 plate appearances this year, still has a lot of appeal. Price is way down at $42.25. Coming into the season, he would have been their highest priced player every day. Took an injury, missed a lot of the season, and has underperformed these 184 plate appearances that he's been available for, but there's a lot of talent there. Right now, sub Mendoza, sub 300 on base, just a 57 WRC plus. If I'm stacking Rockies, he's probably in my first lineup. If he's not in my first lineup, that would just be because of where he's hitting in the batting order, but he'd get into my second lineup, no doubt about it. He's too good to continue to be this bad, and he's too good for these low prices. Samuel Hilliard, not an unplayable $2,500, $2,100 option. It's just, do you really need to go to the 9 spot? But he is a lefty with the ability to put pretty good bat on ball. You might remember him from filling in the Braves lineup over the years. Just 3 home runs in 78 plate appearances last year, just 2 in 200 year before. Hasn't really delivered. Was it with the Rockies that he was good? I want to say he was with... So he went to, Atlanta. All right, so it was just Atlanta just last year. So 2021 with the Rocks, 14 home runs, 5 stolen bases, and 238 plate appearances. That was the one I was looking for. There is a little bit of believable quality for such a low price. Just a bad spot in the batting order. On the red side, Jonathan India scratched yesterday, if I'm remembering correctly, or maybe that was the day before, but appealing in the leadoff spot at second base, 43-31. They're going to be popular in this spot. They're drawing a monster total. It's great hitting conditions, and they're facing Kyle Freeland, but he's a good way to get things started if you're going there, and maybe he falls a little bit by the wayside in favor of some bigger power bats, in favor of Spencer Steer shares at second base on FanDuel, perhaps. On DraftKings, he's probably going to be undeniably popular. 371 on base, a 118 WRC plus, a very strong option for correlated scoring with a little bit of individual upside. 6 homers, 8 steals. Ellie, Superstar Ellie, 6,400, 4,300 across sites, 15 homers, 45 stolen bases, a 219 ISO, a 124 WRC plus. A monster season by any measure. Always worth spending for against this pitcher. Absolutely, there's upside. We've looked previously at Ellie as a righty against a lefty and talked about how he definitely, has hit for less power overall, but has found a little bit more quality this year. And I think he's undeniably playable in this spot at worst. He's going to be crazy popular, but I think he's worth it. And even at the price, I don't think it's a problem. Especially with Jeimer Candelario following him at 4,300, 3,100 across sites. He's just too cheap. 14 home runs, a 211 ISO, 102 WRC plus. Doing Jeimer Candelario things. I don't really get why he's discounted like he is. Spencer Steer for 5,000, 3,600. Full price on FanDuel. Full price both sites. You at least get second base from him on FanDuel. 14 homers, 13 steals, a 199 ISO, 117 WRC plus. A good player. The consistency is outside of the average. Mostly been there. 340 on base this year. He's been pretty strong contributor. Took a bit of a dip. I want to say late May, early June sometime, but seems to have recovered a little bit just looking at the numbers as a whole. Stevenson, tremendous catcher, power upside, 7 home runs and 257 plate appearances off of a 9.6% barrel, 44.4% hard hits. A reasonable enough 166 ISO. It's not a star caliber ISO at all, but it's a guy that shows you at least, there's some doubles in that bat. There's some homers in that bat. Guy that can get involved. Not an overly popular player. 3,600, 2,500 can be a slate breaker at catcher on the right day. He'll get a little bit more popular on DK than he will on FanDuel, of course, where you have to play catchers. but a good option hitting fifth on both sides. Austin Slater, somebody mentioned earlier, now on the Cincinnati Reds, always a target for platoon-based at-bats against a lefty. 2,800 in the outfield on DK, 2,100 on FanDuel. That said, overall this season over 112. He's slashing just 200, 330, 244. You can see the on-base has been good. He does have a little bit of pop in that righty bat, but primarily he's a correlated scoring option. Not the best spot in the lineup for him as a six-hitter. You want India in that leadoff spot, so I get it, but I would maybe have considered putting him like ninth and using him as a wraparound type of an option to reset the table. But that's not what they did. He's playable at best, but he's like a mix and match piece. Novi Marte for 34.26 is still very cheap. That's probably because he's slashing 128, 160, 213 with a -4 WRC plus over 50 plate appearances. But he's cheap for the prospect pedigree, for the talent that's available in that player. At least we think. Rhys Hines for 25,000 now has 2 home runs over 8 plate appearances. It's obviously mashing. Clearly is just going to continue delivering these numbers for his entire career and be the equivalent of 7 Babe Ruths. Presumably the numbers do come down a little bit, but he's still dead mid price at shortstop on FanDuel, and he's a $2,500 outfielder on DraftKings. You could do worse. Santiago Espinal, that's an example of doing worse. You can mix and match your way through some Espinal shares. That's it on DraftKings. 24 at third base, not ideal. Mix and match play, multi-position on FanDuel. This goes Reds bats, Rockies bats, dice roll, dart throw type of Frankie Montas shares at best, and absolutely no Kyle Freeland. Let's take a look at what you guys are chatting about. I've been just staring at the Excel sheet for a minute. Trey had a top 1% finish last night with one of my 6. Needed Ellie. Congratulations, buddy. It sounds like a solid finish anyway. You just keep dropping lineups into the top 1%, and it's just a matter of time. It's like erosion, right? You just keep dropping those raindrops onto the same spot in the mountain, and eventually there's going to be a canyon there. Same kind of idea, except we want to build a mountain, not a canyon. Or I guess that example could go the other way. Patrick Corbin on the hill, one of my absolute favorite targets for bats over the last, it's starting to feel like a decade. It's probably more like 5 years, but it's been a minute since Patrick Corbin was good, and he's been super targetable with DFS bats. You can see the upside for power that the Mets are showing. A lot of quality right-handed power bats in this lineup, plus a Brandon Nimmo who's very good. Really like the opportunity for the Mets, which is typically when the Mets will set themselves on fire and completely explode and not do anything at all. They're very affordable in this spot. $3,500 is the highest price on the FanDuel slate. $5,300 is the highest price on DraftKings. It's an easy to reach Mets stack. Corbin over 100 innings, 18 starts, 5.49 ERA with a 4.46 xFIP. There is a run separating those two, with the xFIP being the better mark, but 4.46 is not an overly appealing number. 24.3% CSW, a 9% swinging, 153 whip, a 15.6% strikeout rate, giving up a typical for him 9.7% barrels, 48% hard hits, 91.3 miles an hour of exit velo. Somehow that's amounted to just a 3.21% home run rate. That's a high-ish home run rate, but as discussed, that's usually we're looking for like 4 to be talking about you as like you've been a disaster for home runs this year. He's gotten lucky for this to be where it is. Last year, 4.18. Year before, 3.79. Again, despite similarly high contact. There is some luck cooked in there, but even with, that is a home run a game kind of a pace at best. And he's given up other runs within that, and he doesn't strike anybody out. He gives up all that tons and tons of contacts. So really appealing spot for the Mets. And again, they're one of these teams, 5.53 implied total. One of those monster-looking teams on the Vegas board. 2 of those teams will come through. One of them will hit the middle, and 2 of them will completely fail. Let's hope we get the ones right. Trey, keep it down over there. Canning does suck. Texas. The moment I saw that 2 of my favorite targets were on the board, I kind of knew who I was stacking today, and then it was just a matter of who fit together. And to be totally frank about it, the Mets and the Rangers fit together really, really well. It's just like as far as the top end bats and what positions they play. on FanDuel. Less so on DraftKings because you got the Lindor and Seager conflict. On FanDuel, you could just put both of those guys in your lineup. You can obviously lessen the cost by leaving one of those guys out and maybe get to a higher end pitcher, which is the conundrum that you face when you start stacking those teams. But even with premium from those two teams, you can get to a decent enough pitcher. Anyway, now that I've revealed my hand. So yeah, Mets super stackable. And then Sevy, 7,500, 8,200. The numbers look somewhat similar to Corbin on the other side when we're talking about the strikeout rate, 17.9%, a 7.9% walk rate. But he's got a 3.83 ERA, a 4.34 xFIP, which is higher than his ERA, but manageable enough if we're going to make the argument. 5.8% barrels is definitely better. He's inducing weak to medium contact with frequency, just 35.6% hard hits, 87.3 miles an hour of exit velo, just a 2.8% home run rate, which is a little bit more believable given what he's done in terms of contact. Still above average by stuff plus, but he's not really inducing swinging strikes, and he's not throwing nearly enough strikes overall, 22.8% CSW. Vientos is definitely too cheap, Trey. We'll get there. He's also the home run pick of the day. So Sevy, I do think is playable. He projects out all right. Going up against the Nationals team that is effectively low strikeout, does have some threats in that lineup. Some effective lefty bats as well to throw at him. CJ Abrams at 6,300, 3,800. Extremely, extremely high priced. I'm going to say it again. By comparison to some of the other shortstops at the high end, he is too high priced. He is very good as an individual, but compared to, let's say, Francisco Lindor on the other side of this game against Patrick fucking Corbin, he should not be 1,000 more. FanDuel's got a closer $300 separation, 35 versus 38. Neither of those is egregious. When DraftKings is at 63 and FanDuel hasn't even cracked 4, you can tell that one of those is wrong. He's too high priced on DraftKings. That said, he can absolutely succeed at that price. It might keep him under-owned. It's a terrific matchup against Sevy. Between him, Lane Thomas, James Wood, and Jesse Winker, those 4 hitters could have a day against Luis Severino. So the Nats are definitely on the board. That's just a stupid high price compared to Lindor. What's Seager at today? Seager for 5,000 against Griff Canning. Really? That's not where we were. So you could pay $1,300 more to get CJ Abrams against Luis Severino and maybe have a successful day, but you could pay $1,300 less and you're probably getting to a chalkier play in Seager against Griff Canning. But you could spend that money to differentiate on a higher end pitcher. Or there's so much you can do with that difference. Anyway, not to harp on it. CJ is very, very good, and he's having a very good year. I don't want to take anything off the table for him because he is a tremendous player. It's just a weird fit. And I'm stalling because I'm grabbing the confirmed version of the Nats lineup, which looks a lot like the one we had. Went from being really excited that they added that junior to Luis Garcia's name to it being the bane of my existence every day because Labs doesn't put it in. You always got to type it in. But all things considered, I'd rather have it to differentiate from the pitchers. Anyway, so CJ, again, very, very expensive at the top of the board. Enough said. 14 homers, 14 steals, a 135 WRC+. He's a fantastic player. You can help average that price down with James Wood, Jesse Winker right off the top there. If you play those 3 guys, that becomes a $4,800 price, $4,867, call it $49. That's a lot more manageable. So he's more appealing when you consider it that way. If you threw Keibert into the mix from the 4 spot, that becomes $4,500. Keibert's a playable enough catcher if you're stacking Nats, especially hitting cleanup for a cheap enough price. He's a switch hitter. We've talked about him a lot over time. Very low strikeout and low walk, so a lot of balls in play. He's just not making the same. This isn't great contact, but it's better than that. It was effective enough. Led to 18 home runs last year. He does have 6 this season. Just a 114 ISO with 67 WRC+. But just as a tool to lower that price, that makes it more effective to stack CJ to stack Nats. Winker has 10 home runs, 12 steals, a nice return to form from him after a couple of seasons out to sea. 134 WRC plus over 338 plate appearances. Been pretty good. James Wood, potential superstar in the making. Over 39 plate appearances, he hit his first home run. He's got a 127 WRC plus. It's not because of these results that we say potential superstar in the making. That's just his potential. Tremendous minor league run and got called up right on schedule, really. 4,200, 3,100, pretty damn cheap for the big lefty against a mediocre at best righty. Top priority bat if you're stacking Nationals, and honestly, not an unappealing one-off consideration, just where he's priced. Not somebody that a lot of people would go to in that capacity. You could throw that dart. Not a high-end, not a high priority one-off, but just one to keep in mind as you get to your 145th hand-built lineup, which hopefully started like yesterday. Got to keep in mind. Looking down the lineup a little bit, Luis Garcia for 46-32. He's effective enough. 10 home runs, 12 stolen bases. One of the better seasons in recent memory. 277, 310, 435, a 109 WRC plus. He's not overly high-end at anything, but for the money at second base, he can give you a good day. He is right-handed, so facing Sevy, no real advantage there for him, but it's playable. 8.2% barrels is a nice jump from his 5.8 last year. Lane Thomas for 56-34 drops in the lineup for reasons. I knew somebody was missing up top. 8 home runs, 21 stolen bases, a tremendous year last year. A mixed year this year, just 98 WRC plus, a 159 ISO, 242, 304, 401. But when it's all said and done, he's one of their best players, if the second best player. 56-34, now that he's hitting 6, is less appealing for the money, but one of the top priority bats in this lineup for sure. Juan Yepez for 24-25 does have some power upside, 7.65 in the home run model. 22 plate appearances, been good, hasn't hit for power yet this year, but he's been effective over that stretch. Just 65 last year, he hit 2 home runs in that sample. 274 the year before, he hit 12 home runs. You might remember he was with St. Louis, 194 ISO. Effective enough bat to get into some stacks if I'm building with the Nats. First base eligibility, first and outfield on FanDuel. Ildemaro Vargas and Jacob Young, mix and match parts. Young's got a lot of speed, 319 on base with 20 stolen bases. Just an 85 WRC plus, 83 WRC plus for Vargas. They're mix and match guys. On the Mets side, we've got Lindor at the top of the lineup for 53-35. Obviously, effectively priced for a star caliber shortstop who, I don't know, maybe nobody loves Francisco Lindor but me, but I'm happy with that. 16 home runs, 16 stolen bases, a 202 ISO, creating runs 23% better than average. 11.25 in the home run model this year, or today. 13.7% barrels, 46.3% hard hits this year. He's been very, very solid. Has a reputation of being a diminished player for some reason. Mets fans don't seem to like him for some reason. Take advantage. If he gets lower owned than he should be, that's an absolute upside for us. You can see everybody in the top 5 for the Mets has a double-digit and significantly double-digit barrel rate. Everybody has a 40+% hard hit rate. These guys are good. They're all going to be hitting from the right side except for Brandon Nimmo, who is good enough against lefties, and especially lefties of the caliber of Patrick Corbin. I know I don't have to sell the Mets today. I know that people are going to be going there. They'll be chalky enough, and it's kind of obvious. But it's just a really, really appealing spot. 15 homers, 8 steals for Nimmo, 208 ISO, a 141 WRC plus. Excellent ability to drive the ball, 50.7% hard hits, leads the team. And that's a team that includes JD Martinez, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos even. Don't sleep on Nimmo just because of a lefty-lefty today. 48 for Martinez with first base eligibility in addition to outfield. You don't really need the first base because he's not going to block off Pete Alonso for you too many times, but he's a terrific option for power. 10 home runs, 203 ISO facing Patrick Corbin today. Could be a double-dong day for JD Martinez. 3,200 on FanDuel is crushingly cheap for that bat. 9.70 in the home run model honestly could be a little bit higher. Pete Alonso, 52-32 across sites, 18 home runs, 217 ISO, a 120 WRC plus. And then, yes, the bell of the ball, Mark Vientos, just 4,400 on DraftKings, just 3,000 on FanDuel. We're going to do this one more time. You guys are out of your goddamn minds. Over 178 plate appearances now holding down third base every day for this team. Slashing 287, 337, 537. He has a 250 ISO, 14.9% barrel rate, a 43% hard hit rate. He's hit 11 home runs in 178 plate appearances. Can we please raise his price? He shouldn't be free. Francisco Alvarez is also free. 4,200, 2,700 for him. He's hit 4 home runs with a 191 ISO in his 146 plate appearances. He absolutely mashed his way to 25 home runs in 400 and change plate appearances last year on 12.5% barrels, 44.3% hard hits. You could easily say that you could substitute that in there, and it would be another guy, a sixth guy in a row with ridiculous contact metrics. He's hitting for a better average over this moderate sample, but it's a growing sample at this point. 298, 363 is tremendous improvement from what he was in those categories last year. He's sacrificed maybe a slight amount of power for it so far, but tremendous upside against this pitcher. You should not be skipping him, especially on DraftKings for 42. 27 on FanDuel. You can absolutely mix and match your way to some shares. You could go Alonso at first, Vientos at third, and Alvarez at catcher, util, and stretch out across those guys despite some common positioning. Jose Iglesias has been a nice story. He's a moderately talented player. You can mix and match your way to some cheap shares in the infield. Tyrone Taylor, Harrison Bader, both mix and match quality guys with some history of providing some counting stats from the right side against mediocre lefties. Don't sleep on either one of those guys to have a day. It's probably going to be one of those situations where it's like, I stacked all four of my or all 5 of my guys from the top 5-6 hitters of the Mets, and then pick your poison from those last 2. I didn't have Tyrone Taylor's 2 home run day, Harrison Bader's home run and 4 runs scored and 2 stolen bases day, whatever he does. It feels like it's going to be one of those kind of days. Those guys are very, very cheap, and they do get involved in that way, especially, again, against bad lefties. I could absolutely see the handwriting on the wall for that one. That's going to be me at the end of the night like, damn it, why didn't I play Bader, especially after I talked about it on the show. That said, bottom 2 spots in the lineup, always less appealing, but they will be low owned. This goes Mets bats, Nationals bats. Honestly, neither pitcher, but if you're playing either one, it's Sevy. I don't really see much reason to play Patrick Corbin at all. This game's only on DraftKings. We do need to pick up pace a little bit, been meandering through this slate. Gordon Graceffo for 7,300. 4 1/3 in bulk relief in that first outing in the show. He struck out 4, walked 2, gave up an earned run on 3 hits. That was against the Reds in St. Louis. Pretty good outing. In the minors this season, 21.1% strikeouts with a 9.2% walk in AAA. Over 15 starts, 77 innings. Last year in 18 starts, 86 innings. Similar, 20.9% and 11.6% walks. So not really a high-end strikeout pitcher. Does have a little bit of a walk issue still, and kind of aggressively got promoted just for lack of options up to the show here. He's very effectively priced. It's just I don't love the upside, even in a second game of a doubleheader kind of a scenario, facing what is a pretty decent Royals lineup without a lot of strikeout upside, and they're very good at limiting strikeouts. I don't really see the potential for Graceffo. Michael Wacha looking the other way, though. 22.3% for the strikeout rate for this projected version of the Cards lineup. 21.4% strikeout rate over the course of the season for him with a 3.74 ERA, a 4.01 xFIP, 10.3% swinging. He doesn't really rate out well by Stuff Plus, but he's been decent at limiting power, inducing marginal contact. Wacha's good enough for the money at 76, where I do think he mixes into, this solid mid-range here. Right, DraftKings-wise, that's a solid group of options. I'll stop it short of Frankie Montas, maybe. But he mixes into that group and is potentially effective enough. This Cardinals team, after struggling through the first month or so of the season, has been definitely improved and better. That said, they still do have some scuffling veterans, but Goldie had 12 home runs coming into today. He hit his 13th home run this afternoon, so hopefully improving a little bit. Arenado, I think, hit a home run earlier today as well, his 8th of the year. So hopefully those guys are coming around a little bit. And then you've got some interesting enough players in, with a little bit of power upside, a little bit of speed upside. So I could see the Cards getting to Wacha, but overall it's probably a situation where I favor Wacha a little bit and I favor the Royals bats a little bit. Run total wise, though, this one was just right in the middle for both of those teams. So maybe you don't really prioritize anything from this slate or from this game on the DK slate. But I think if anything, it's probably Waka. Looking at Cardinals bats to start things off, Mason Wynn for 4,400, 289, 337, 409, having a very good little season. 4 home runs, 9 stolen bases. Not the biggest contributor of counting stats, but a good enough correlated scoring option when he's leading off, and it's a fair price. It's just, another guy who kind of is not overly ideal at shortstop, considering the super high-end options that we've got at that position. So that's part of the considerations, part of the calculus with when you stack this Cardinals team, what you're stacking them with. Does that other team offer me a premium shortstop? What's his ownership? What's his cost look like as compared to a correlated scoring guy from the top spot in the lineup? Alec Burleson for 4,300 has 14 home runs and 7 steals. A little bit underrated price-wise. 39.2% hard hits looks a lot like last year. 7.1% barrels is up a little bit, but a good contributor of counting stats this year. 122 WRC plus over 316 opportunities. Quality enough lefty bat against a righty. Not a bad option. Wilson Contreras, premium catcher bat, 13.3% barrels, 45.7% hard hits. Over 193 plate appearances, got a 253 ISO with 9 home runs. Excellent catcher. Not sure if he started the first game. Let's see. Whoops. He did play the first game. You might get him at DH. Actually, it looks like he DH'd the first game because Pajes is in the lineup. So he'll probably be catching the second game. I don't know. However they position it, if he's in the lineup, he's a priority for you, and I don't really care where they play him on the field. That said, it would be super interesting if he picked up like first base eligibility. Anyway, Goldschmidt, 4,500, 2,900. Again, underperforming overall on the season, but hit his 13th home run just a little while ago, has 6 stolen bases. 140 ISO is presumably a little bit higher. The 90 WRC plus is a little bit higher. He is very cheap, and he is still making fantastic contact. That kind of falls by the wayside in discussions about his strikeout rate spiking, his walks declining, his overall quality declining in terms of the slash line. The power is still there. You're just getting a different kind of Paul Goldschmidt. Brendan Donovan's been very good, 3,900, 3,000. Strong contributor of OPS, 751 OPS for the season. 117 WRC plus. He's a mix and match quality player overall, but he fills 3 positions for 3,000 on that's FanDuel. Sorry, 3,900 on outfield only on DraftKings. That actually diminishes the quality a little bit, not having the mix and match ability across infield spots. But he's a playable part from the left side. Arenado for 4,100 is very, very cheap for who he used to be. This year he's been pretty down. Just a 108 ISO, hit his 8th home run, so that'll be a little higher. That'll be a little higher later. But you can see the premium contact is greatly diminished. We've looked in past shows at that long, luxurious swing, one of the worst swings, one of the lengthiest swings in the league, and one of the slowest swings in the league. Those two factors do not combine well. That's where his power went. That's where his quality went. So kind of concerning there for Arenado as even in terms of a bounce back, but he's very, very cheap at this point. Does still have the ability, if he manages to get bat on ball, to drive the ball a little bit. Lars Nootbaar for 4,000, Nolan Gorman for 41, both quality players. You can see in Nootbaar, he's hit 5 home runs and stolen 3 bases, just a 166 ISO, but he's above average for run creation. And the 9.1% barrels and 52.7% hard hits from the lefty, pretty appealing to go to as a late lineup cheap consideration. Gorman, 16% barrels, mediocre hard hit rate, but 17 home runs, leads the team in home runs again. 214 ISO, just dead at league average for run creation. Michael Ciani, just a mix and match part for 22. It's probably Michael Wacha for 7,600, and then either lineup, they're pretty much a tie. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. The Royals have the better matchup. So I prefer the Royals bats, and I didn't run them down. Let me do that real quick. Adam Frazier for 28 to start things off. Not an ideal option. It's not Michael Garcia in the leadoff spot. He's moved down to the 8th spot. Did they do that recently and I missed it? Or is this is the projected version? I guess they did. I didn't realize I didn't even look. Oh, no, we don't have these lineups. That's right. It's a doubleheader. So finally, maybe moved Michael Garcia out of that lineup spot. But an equally bad, maybe they just don't know what belongs in a leadoff hitter. But Adam Frazier, not a great option. He's very cheap. You can mix and match your way to some shares in combination with the other hitters. Bobby Witt, super appealing at shortstop for 65. That said, you do have a cheaper Corey Seager, a cheaper Francisco Lindor to work with. But Bobby Witt is obviously a superstar. 15 home runs, 22 steals, a 154 WRC+. Vinny Pasquantino, you guys know I love that bat. 46.8% hard hit rate, 13.3% strikeout rate. Those things go together really well. 11 home runs, a 183 ISO. Those numbers will continue to climb. Sal Perez hit a home run already today. We'll see if he's in the lineup again. 15 homers on the season now. Tremendous option. Mike Massey, 4,200, 3,100. Oh, I'm sorry. I might be remembering something from last night when I said Sal Perez hit a home run. I forget whether that was in game one today or from a game last night. It doesn't matter. 14 or 15 home runs. He's a tremendous power bat at catcher. If he's hitting cleanup, you go to him. Mike Massey for 42, 31. Pretty quality 142 plate appearances with a 233 ISO and 8 home runs. Been a high-end hitter since rejoining this lineup. Mediocre contact, but makes a lot of contact. 15.5% strikeouts, 2.1% walks. Very good option at second base for a fair price at 4,200. Freddie Fermin, if he's in the lineup, 3,300 is a very playable catcher who's a little bit underrated. 304, 356, 435. He's hit 4 home runs in 177 plate appearances. Had some good quality plate appearances last year as well. MJ for 36. A lot of premium contact. Mixed results. 9 home runs, a 177 ISO, terrible slash line, but a lot of premium contact from the left side. Garcia is a good player who does drive the ball effectively. 6 homers, 21 steals, in a better spot in the lineup now, but they should split the difference and play him like here. Kyle Isbell's an afterthought in the last spot in the lineup. So again, that probably goes Waka, Royals bats, Cardinals bats. I don't think you reach for Graceffo on DraftKings. Brian Hoeing, 6,000, 5,900 across sites. Really doesn't project well. Not going to get the innings here. Don't really see him as much more than a multi-inning opener. So I don't see any need to break him down or go to him. He's not cheap enough for use on DraftKings at 6,000. If he was 4,000, probably even still no, because it's the Astros on the other side. In his most recent outing, he made a start like this, went 3 innings, struck out 4, walked 1, gave up an earned run on 5 hits. That was against the White Sox. I'm pretty sure we're all aware that the White Sox are a lot worse than the Astros. So Hoeing's just a target, but Fromber is very interesting, especially at 8,300 on DraftKings. He should be owned through the nose at that price on DraftKings in this matchup. Just like unapologetically good chalk. Even if it doesn't work out, just put him in your lineups and we'll apologize tomorrow. That is too good a price to ignore. Regardless of where he's owned, he should be in a lot of your lineups. 3.84 ERA with a better 3.56 xFIP. Strikeouts are down this year at just 19%. He's walking 8.2%, but he's tremendous keeping the ball in the yard. Negative 0.6 degree average launch, 4.8% barrels, a 2.12% hard hit home run rate, despite the hard hits in the exit velo, which we don't care about when it's all on the ground. He is tremendous. He's facing one of the lowest end lineups in baseball. Absolutely favorable option. I don't think it's a good spot to target the Marlins as a contrarian stack, as a low-owned stack, as a value play, or anything along those lines. Maybe they get there on one time out of however many handfuls you want to call it, but it's really a low end opportunity given what he does well, how much he checks power, how much he checks run creation. You saw they were at a 3.1 something, 3.25 implied total, second lowest on the board to the Blue Jays, who were facing a pitcher who's very similar in Logan Webb. Between the two, I'd rather have the Blue Jays, honestly. They're just getting the further diminished by that ballpark, probably. But even if you roster a ton of Fromber, even as a hedge, it's really not that appealing. They're all cheap. You do get that upside out of it, I guess. But that's not probably going to be enough. Jazz has 11 home runs and 18 stolen bases with a 108 WRC+, a 159 ISO. Kind of mixed results, 258, 328, 417. He's good, not great. Good for counting stats, not great for consistency. I think that's fair. 1 in 4 strikeouts, but capable enough of drawing walks to keep him afloat. Definitely a high priority bat if you're stacking this team, but lefty-lefty against Frommer, no thank you. Brian De La Cruz, 35-27, is at least cheap. He's got 15 home runs, but he's diminished around the power output. 241, 291, 412 now, down to a 96 WRC plus. Still good contact numbers, but that's basically all he's got at this point. Strikeouts are going up. Josh Bell has been pretty bad this season. 8 home runs, just an 80 WRC plus, a 124 ISO. 9 home runs in a bad season from Jake Berger, just a 139 ISO with a 72 WRC plus. Dane Myers is another righty in this lineup who's cheap with some decent premium contact numbers. He's hit 2 home runs, stolen 3 bases in 86 plate appearances, 173 ISO, 118 WRC plus, a mix and match part in a bad stack at best. Emmanuel Rivera, Xavier Edwards, Ali Sanchez, and Vidal Brujan going down the lineup. Nobody has any kind of appeal. I mean, they're all small samples, but we can go back in time for at least a couple of those guys. That's not even okay line. I was going to say the 4 home runs, 261, but 314, 358, .097. It's really bad down lineup. That was Emmanuel Rivera as the, I guess, next most appealing guy, and he's hitting 6th. So just as far as priorities down lineup for the Marlins go in a terrible, terrible spot, just go in order of the batting order or whatever position you need, but don't stack the Marlins to begin with, and don't stack the bottom of the Marlins lineup where all the bad players are against Framber Valdez. Just not appealing. On the Astros side, we can use the Astros. Everything Astros looks pretty good here. As I was saying at the top of the show, a 4.86 implied total maybe falls a little bit off the board in a great looking spot for offensive upside given all these 5+ marks and then some other appealing teams. So maybe you can get a little bit sneakier, a little bit lower ownership with the Astros, and you got some excellent bats here. A $5,200 Jose Altuve for one. Why in the hell is Jose Altuve at 52 on DraftKings? I know that's still a high price, but shouldn't he be 55 plus? I mean, let's do this real quick. This will be fun. Tail of the tape. We'll fix this in a second. I know they play different positions, but they're both in the infield. Altuve these are very similar samples of plate appearances. For one, Altuve is like a well-established future Hall of Famer. But let's compare the numbers. 309 average for Altuve outpaces dramatically the 276 average for CJ Abrams. CJ scored 3 more runs. Okay. It's a handful of fantasy points. He's hit 1 more home run. Okay. He's stolen 1 more base. He scored 5 more runs. Altuve's getting on base 8 points better. CJ's got the better slug, the better ISO. The run creation marks are a point different. Should there be an $1,100 price gap between those two players? My only point here overall is that CJ should probably be like 58 and Altuve should maybe be like 55, 56. I just don't think they consider these pricing differences for the same, literally the same production. There's no difference in those slash lines, and minor differences obviously. But those are very, very similar levels of output. It's just weird. Altuve's cheap at 52. 37 on FanDuel is more correct. 309, 358, 464. Having another tremendous year. Alex Bregman for 42-32 across sites. 11 home runs for him. A 159 ISO, 106 WRC plus. Has really pulled himself back to respectability. This looks a lot more like Alex Bregman than it did earlier. Still not striking out. Draws enough walks. Doesn't really and never really has made great contact. Just has always gotten away with it. So we're back to Alex Bregman days and he's just cheap now. 5,600, 4,200 is arguably on DraftKings anyway. A few hundred cheap, 400 cheap for Alvarez. It's a $6,000 player. 243 ISO, 154 WRC plus, 19 homers, continuing his run of excellence over the last handful of seasons. There's nothing to dislike about Jordan Alvarez against this pitcher at that price. 42 on FanDuel. There's honestly nothing to dislike at this price either. It's just correct. This is cheap. Jainer Diaz for 4,400, 45.7% hard hits. Continues to be another one of those middle of the lineup, high quality catchers where you have to play the position. 7 home runs, a 130 ISO is, mixed results for power, but he's putting the ball in play with consistency. 14.4% strikeouts, 4% walks. Talk about this basically every time the Astros are on the slate. It's a quality catcher bat when you need him. John Singleton for 32, 24, has 7 home runs over 104 WRC plus. He's an okay lefty power bat on the right day, but kind of low end overall. A lot of strikeouts out of him, but he's drawing enough walks to keep himself above water. Jeremy Pena for 42, 3,000 has been decidedly average this year. A little bit of a contributor for counting stats. Started out the season a lot stronger than where he's landed overall, just kind of looking more like the player we've seen over the last few years. Jake Myers, Joey Loperfido, and Cesar Salazar down the lineup. Salazar, good results over 26 plate appearances. We'll see what he becomes. He's a mix and match catcher as far as I'm concerned, with a better catcher lineup in the lineup way above him. Loperfido for just 28, 26 is kind of interesting. He's only made 83 plate appearances. He's kind of caught in between right now. But if he's in the lineup, he's got a lot of talent. 1 home run, 2 stolen bases on the season, a 104 WRC plus. Had a bunch of minor league home runs before they called him up. Decent power bat from the left side. And then Myers is just a mix and match outfielder. Framber Valdez way up at the top, followed by Astros bats. Really nothing from the Marlins side at all. Suppose I could have checked if we had lineups for that game. We do. Let me see real quick. Loperfido batting 9th. Mauricio Dubon in the Astros lineup hitting 8th. I won't take the time to put it in, but it's Myers 7, Pena 5. Who's out of the lineup? Hang on. Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Diaz, Pena. Singleton 6. Oh, so it's Salazar who's not in the lineup. Duh. So all the high-end talents are in the lineup, just in a slightly different order down in these guys, and then Mauricio Dubon with his cheap multi-position gets into the lineup, hitting 8th. On the Marlins side, it was Jazz, Dela Cruz, Berger, Bell, Myers, Rivera. Jonah Bride slides into the lineup for the dead minute, third base. Xavier Edwards and Ali Sanchez, they continue to be very, very low end. There's no appeal added by Jonah Bride being in the lineup. Pirates and the Brewers. Doesn't look like we've got either of these lineups. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. You guys rock for hanging out. 5:16. We'll make our way through this in plenty of time. What do we have left? Only a handful of games. We're doing all right. Travis Duarte walking in the door a little bit late and just disrupting everything. Walks in the door and starts yelling, "What up, y'all?" Big exclamation point. Just like a Southerner. Kicks in the door. No regard for what's going on. Just make the attention about me. What up, y'all? What's going on, Trav? Good to see you, buddy. Late as a mother. Who we on, ladies and gents? Rewind and hit the 2.5 times speed and catch up. But we love a lot of the boom. We love a lot of those high-end teams up here. Just to catch up real quick, Trav, do a quick summary for everybody else. These are going to be chalky, pretty obvious, but there's some killer spots there. For me, I love the Mets. Also really like the Rangers at a slightly lower total. We've got Griff Canning. We're going to talk about this game in just a minute. And then on this one, we've got Patrick Corbin, just 2 of my favorite targets. But we've got excellent hitting conditions in all of these games up top with wind blowing out. This one has a interesting pitching matchup in that both guys are good at suppressing power, good at suppressing runs. But you can see the totals are definitely favoring bats in Philly with the wind blowing out in Hitters Park. Wind blowing out, Hitters Park here. J.P. Sears against Nick Pivetta. Favor bats on both sides in that one. Gettable pitchers on both sides in this one is Frankie Montas and Kyle Freeland there. Bats on both sides in that one. Reds highly favored over the Rockies, but the Rockies are frisky enough to get to Frankie Montas. Mets, just talked about, love the Mets. Nats, playable going the other way against Sevy. And then this game is only on DK, just kind of falls into the middle. Prefer Michael Wacha out of everything in that game. We just talked about that game. It's all things Astros. Framber Valdez looks great. The Astros bats look great. Nothing from the Marlins, and now you're all caught up. Tobias Myers going for the Brewers. Martin Perez on the mound for the Pirates. One of these things is a little bit better than the other. I think we could maybe consider some Tobias Myers shares for 7,700, 7,400. Even on FanDuel, I think there's a little bit of upside against the Pirates. 21.1% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup, 23.3% for the same hitters last year. Myers over 64 starts, 64 starts would be impressive. Over 12 starts, 64 innings. Myers has a 21.5% strikeout rate on mediocre strike throwing numbers. 9.5% swinging, 26.7% CSW. But he's gone 6 in a handful of starts in a row. Not in a row. He's gone 5 of his last 6 starts have been at least 6 innings. A 5-inning game mixed in there in which he only gave up 1 earned run on 5 hits, struck out just 3, walked none. It was an effective start. He got the win. That was against San Diego at San Diego. Didn't get the quality start there. And then in his most recent outing, he went 6, gave up 4, so he didn't book the quality start. Struck out 5, walked 1, 4 earned on 8 hits. Took the loss. That was at Coors Field, though. We'll forgive that one. It's still a pretty decent performance. 6 innings of 3-run ball against the Cubs, found 6 strikeouts. 6 1/3 against the Angels at LA. 6 1/3 shutout innings of 4-hit balls, struck out 6, walked 2. 6 innings against the Blue Jays, gave up a solo home run and 2 other hits, but nothing else. Struck out 4, walked 1. 5 strikeouts, 3 walks over 8 innings of 1-hit ball against the Tigers at Detroit. Given some of the performances in there that have come against mediocre teams, I think there's believable upside for Tobias Myers here. He doesn't go out and smash the day, strike out 12 very often. But I think an effective for the money kind of a strikeout, for the money on DK, especially as an SP2 who hits right there effectively in the middle of the board, that's not a bad option. Waka probably slightly more threatened. He's probably the better of the 2 pitchers, but it's not by much. Probably a little bit more threatened by a better Cards lineup. Sevy, probably not as good as Tobias Myers at this point. Probably a little more threatened by a lower strikeout, higher quality Nationals lineup. Slightly higher quality, maybe. Call it a tie. It's on the board at worst. At 74 on FanDuel, again, if you need a further discount from, say, Charlie Morton, or like if you're going to Sevy at 82, or Lorenzen, let's say, at 81, Gavin Stone, if you're considering him, that is an appreciable price difference. I think he's on the board on both sides for value. Martin Perez just isn't. 17.2% strikeouts, 4.72 ERA, a 4.44 xFIP, 4.40 rather xFIP. A lot of power allowed, 3.31% home runs. He's just a target. He did have a decent start, 7 1/3 in his most recent outing. That was against St. Louis, but it was more one of those games where more he shut down St. Louis than he did anything overly special other than booking the quality start. Didn't even get the win after pitching into the 8th inning. Not his fault. Gave up 1 earned on 7 hits, struck out 2, walked 1, but that's a mediocre start. 4 innings against the Braves the start before that, gave up 6 earned, struck out 4, walked 2. Struck out 2, walked 2, gave up just 1 on 4 hits, but only lasted 3 innings against the Braves in a home start. 4 1/3 against the Giants, gave up 2 earned, 4 runs total on 5 hits, struck out 4, walked 3. You can see the pattern. Pretty low end by Stuff Plus at 71.05. Doesn't induce swinging strikes anymore. Low end CSW. Highly targetable with a pretty good Brewers lineup. If Jackson Chourio continues to hit leadoff for this team, that is ideal for him. We've talked all season about his high-end talent. He was the top prospect coming into the season. Has been here with the club since they broke spring training. Been mixed in terms of the results, but a very young 20 years old, or he just turned 21, is somewhere in that range. 9 home runs, 10 stolen bases, the youngest player in the major leagues. He's delivered enough to at least believe in the future and believe in the talent level. 42.3% hard hits, has definitely had a better last month and a half than his first couple of months. Strong option from the leadoff spot for still a very cheap price for the quality on both sides. William Contreras, one of the top catchers in baseball, 8.7% barrels, 49.8% hard hits. He's hit 10 home runs this season, 151 ISO, 128 WRC+. Gets on base a ton with a 359 on base percentage, hits the ball extremely hard, doesn't really strike out that much. Yelich for 6,000, 4,100, justifiably expensive. Slashing 331, 412, 532 with a 202 ISO, a 165 WRC+. He's hit 11 home runs and stolen 20 bases in just 285 plate appearances, I'll add. Remember when people were trying to sell you guys the idea that Christian Yelich wasn't good anymore? Screw those people. They were wrong. Willie Adames, 46, 31, 13 homers, 12 steals. Quality season out of Willie, 106 WRC+. He's never going to hit for a high average over a consistent, over a long sample, but high quality contributor of counting stats for a cheap price at shortstop. and compares favorably enough given the upside to the Seagers of the world and those guys. He's not that level of player. Those guys do a lot of things that Willie doesn't. But in terms of where the ceiling is on any given slate, it's not that far off for the discount that you get. 32.29 for Blake Perkins, a quality enough contributor of counting stats. Up and down for consistency, but right around league average type of a player in the outfield. Just another outfielder at the end of the day, but playable. 4,200 for Rhys Hoskins and all his power, 2,900 on FanDuel. He's got 13 home runs. A weak slash line, but a 193 ISO is okay. 106 WRC plus. Room to grow in the ISO and the power output department, definitely for Rhys Hoskins. Not bad results, though, for power after missing all of last year. 12.7% barrels. He's very cheap. Bryce Turang for 5,000, 3,200. I don't care about the lefty against this lefty. 284, 346, 403 with 29 stolen bases and a 113 WRC plus. All you really need to know. Andrew Monasterio, Vinny Capra, pretty skippable down the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match pieces at best. On the Pirates side, McCutch didn't play yesterday. O'Neill Cruz didn't play yesterday. Presumably we get him back today. Diminishes the lineup when they're not available for sure. If they're there, you've got three guys at the top of the lineup, above 9 but below 10 in the home run model. All three of those guys look good for power yesterday. Myers, with the moderate quality of these shows, has given up a fair number of home runs at 3.83 in the home run model, 3.83% home runs, 8.2% barrels, 37% hard hits, 89.4 miles an hour of exit velo. So you can see where the home run model's getting a little bit of the power upside that we're seeing there. You've also got guys like Sawinski down lineup, who's having a terrible year, but still does have power in that bat. Last year in a higher lineup position, Sawinski would have easily been above 10 in this spot. He's just diminished this season, but there's still a lingering threat there from the left side. The top three guys are easily your top priority bats. They're not difficult to reach. Those are easy enough prices to reach in combination with one another on FanDuel. And it's kind of the case on DraftKings as well, but at least you get McCutch at 44. They're a little bit more expensive probably than they could be. I feel like you could get those guys a little bit cheaper. Usually I'm arguing it the other way. Not that Brian Reynolds is bad or deserves to be underpriced. 17 home runs, 280, 344, 486, a 207 ISO, 131 WRC plus. Having a big year. 11% barrels, 46.5% hard hits. This is after a not slow start, but like a grudging start to the season. It didn't really come about his numbers all that quickly this year, but I won't call it a full slow start. He was all right. O'Neill Cruz is a tremendous hitter of the baseball. Just needs to improve in his consistency. Strike out a little bit less, as we've talked about, but 14 home runs, a 197 ISO, 18.7% barrels, and 54.5% hard hits. There's a lurking superstar there. I'm going to keep saying it until it comes true. McCutch at the top for 44 is cheap on DraftKings. 31 is fine on FanDuel. He's got 12 homers. Still gets on base okay, but not the McCutcheon of old in that department. Rowdy Tellez, another player, not the player of old. Still does have a lefty bat with some pop in it, but it's been few and far between this year. 8 home runs, just a 145 ISO, but he's very, very cheap. That's why he's so cheap. So it's kind of cooked into the price. Josh Palacios, 3,026, mix and match piece. Sawinski, I mentioned before, power upside for sure for 34.26. Probably my favorite bat among the final 4 hitters here. Just Money Grandal, mix and match catcher at best, 3 home runs on the season. And then Ke'Bryan Hayes in the 7th spot. I keep talking about it. It's another spot that I want to continue focusing on until it comes true. 43.3% hard hits this year. It's diminished from last year. Barrels are way down from last year. I loved the quality of contact that he was showing last year against a sub 20% strikeout rate with a 5.3% walk. I thought that would lead to better output this season, but it really hasn't so far. 3 home runs, 8 steals, a bad slash line, just a 68 WRC plus. He's very cheap at third base, and I do still believe there's talent there. I'm not breaking any ground here, right? This isn't just me. He also plays Gold Glove third base. So he'll be in the lineup every day no matter what. But I do think there's offensive upside still in that bat. It's not to the degree of a Vinny Pasquantino. Between the two, Vinny's the better hitter in the long term, I think. But it's along those lines where it's just like, all right, a consistent striker of the ball at that level should see better results, especially if he can get back to like that kind of contact. So I would continue to roll Ke'Bryan Hayes shares if I'm stacking Pirates, but he's nobody's priority overall. This is Brewers bats by a pretty wide margin up top. Tobias Myers value shares only if you need them, but they are there, more so on DraftKings. And then just mix and match Pirates as a, I would definitely say hedge any big investment in Tobias Myers. So that's how the Pirates get on the board as a stack. And then they're a mix and match playable value stack, primarily like the top three guys or like top three plus Rowdy, and it's difficult to even reach for the catcher as the fifth man. Well, you get me. The top three guys are your priority. We love this spot. We've talked about it a few times already. Going up against one of our favorite targets on the season, Griff Canning. Griff checks all the boxes. 40 plus there, 90 plus there, right at 4 there, 8% plus barrels, high average launch. He also does us the favor of not really striking anybody out, allowing a ton of consistency of contact, not having great stuff, walking too many hitters. 4.87 ERA with a 4.89 xFIP. He is exactly what he looks like, and that is not all that good a pitcher. 9.8% swinging, 24.4% CSW. He was better last year, but allowed a lot of similar contact. Gets decimated by lefty power bats. Plenty of righties can hit him for power as well. We have 3 guys in this Texas lineup above the magic number for home run upside. They're the obvious candidates with Semien Seager and Adolis Garcia. Wyatt Langford having a nice surge over the past few weeks, becoming the player he's supposed to be, hitting in the heart of that lineup now. 4,000, 3,000 across sites, continues to be very cheap, projects out really, really well in the cleanup spot. Josh Smith is cheap and having a tremendous season. It's a killer Texas lineup today in a great spot. I honestly feel like it's a little under on the Vegas board. I don't want to blow up our secret here or anything, but like juice that up to 5-ish. You give it like, that gets us to 5. It's not far off the mark. If I'm stacking Rangers, Corey Seager continues to be the highest priority, especially on DK at 5,000 compared to where all those other shortstops we've talked about already are. Lindor and Seager together in a lineup on FanDuel is tremendous. Can't do that on DK if you're combining those two teams, but there's a lot of other appealing bats on both sides that you can mix and match your way to combinations. If you're putting those two teams together in a bunch of different lineups, you obviously want some with Seager, some with Lindor. Between the two, I probably do favor Seager. Just considering the lefty upside against Canning, the consistency of quality is probably the slightly higher end player, but it's very, very close between those two. Can't go wrong either way. 17 homers on the season, a 210 ISO, 127 WRC plus for Seager, and a very strong slash line, but somewhat diminished for him. So there's upside. Semien is very cheap because he's got a diminished slash line as well. 12 home runs, 3 steals, just a 149 ISO, a 90 WRC plus, and again, just 232, 300, 381. Has not been like Marcus Semien in terms of the results overall this year, but everything over here, I'm going to say it again, is exactly who he's supposed to be. So I feel like this normalizes. Continue rolling Semien shares out there until it improves, and then continue doing it after it improves, obviously. Smith over 322 has a 296, 384, 457 slash line with a 39% better than average run creation mark. He's having a great year. 8 home runs, 4 steals. I didn't see it coming. I didn't think he was going to be this good. Filling in admirably for Josh Young at third base. He's jumped to shortstop when Corey Seager's out. Multi-position eligible on both sides, 41, 3,000. He's too cheap, honestly, for the results that he's provided. Just for what he's done this year, that's just too cheap. It doesn't really add up. Langford, again, way too cheap. He's up to 270, 333, 409, 139 ISO, 105 WRC plus, up to 5 home runs and 7 steals, making very good contact, 7.5% barrels and 41.8% hard hits, striking out just 19% of the time as a rookie. There's a lot of upside there. Adolis Garcia hit his 17th home run. 202 ISO, just a 91 WRC plus, just getting on at a 279 clip with a 215 average. The slash line is really disappointing. Everything else is totally fine. The premium contact is down slightly, but it's not at all tragic as compared to last year. 14.2 down from 16.1 in the barrels, 48.3 down from 49.7. That's fine. I'll take it. It's this and this that are hurting him, and the lack of steals. But tons and tons of upside, and I will absolutely gladly take the discount on that player. 4,500, 3,200. He's in most of my Texas stacks. Nathaniel Lowe. I think you guys know I like him a lot at first base. 38.29. You've got a lot of corner options, again, if you're stacking this team with the Mets. But on his own, love the option at first base. 6 home runs on the season, a 354 on base, a 112 WRC plus with power underneath the surface there if it comes around. Even if the power doesn't come around, he's just cheap for the quality that he can provide, the correlated scoring that he can provide. If the power arrives, you've got a bargain on your hands. Jonah Heim, Travis Jankowski, Leody Taveras, mix and match parts positionally. Heim's got a little bit of power upside, 8 home runs on the board, but he's been stuck at 8 for a minute, just a 118 WRC, 118 ISO. Still an 8.1% barrel, consistent right around this level over the last few seasons. Mix and match quality catcher. Jankowski and Taveras just here for a little bit of correlated scoring and speed, but neither one is doing anything consistently. The Angels facing Michael Lorenzen, 8,100 across sites for him. Double-digit walk rate is never good. Sub 20% strikeout rate is never good. 3.21 ERA is all right, but a 4.85 xFIP is revelatory. Mediocre swinging strike rate, bad CSW. He's gotten probably pretty lucky to keep the whip down where it is at a 1.18, given that extreme walk rate. I bet you he's got a somewhere around the Mendoza line batting average on balls in play against. 220 BABIP against. That's how you luck your way to that kind of a whip against that kind of walk rate. He is not as good even as it looks, as revealed by the xFIP against the ERA, the stuff plus numbers, the fact that he gives up plenty of premium contact and power on a fly ball trajectory that's resulted so far in 3.43% home runs. I think he's targetable enough. I think it keeps the Angels on the board as a value team. They're at a 4.37 implied total. They are not dead by any means here. As discussed, you've got Kiston Hura in this lineup now. Joe Adell, Mickey Moniak, Kiston Hura, Shanuel, you could even throw into that mix as mediocre high-end prospects. And then a lot of Anthony Rendon, if he's in the lineup again, is still the dead min on FanDuel, makes it easy to stack for value. Not that he's been good this year or wants to be good anymore, but he's cheap and he's been leading off, so makes it appealing enough. He's still low strikeout. He can put the ball in play for you. But it's just really interesting with, in addition to guys who are not in this projected version of the lineup that they've got on this team now. They're like a really weird former dynasty team from a few years ago in fantasy. Taylor Ward for 4,400, 3,100, 14 home runs on the season. 179 ISO, 107 WRC plus. Continues to be probably their best player, at least their most consistent. With apologies to Logan O'Hoppe. 14 homers, 282, 334, 491 from O'Hoppe, 209 ISO, 130 WRC plus. He's actually probably been their best player. It's close between the two. He could hit higher up in the lineup and would get more appealing up there, but he's perfectly fine from down here if you're stacking this team. Tons of premium contact, pretty good price for a catcher on DK. 3,000 on FanDuel. There's nothing wrong with skipping Nolan Shanuel and just calling him a first baseman, especially when you get first and second base eligibility on Drury. So second base there. Kiston Hura also at the dead min. I didn't notice that at first on FanDuel. That's appealing. You're no action in the majors last year, but over 266 plate appearances in 2022 with Milwaukee. Did deliver 14 home runs, a 222 ISO, and a 115 WRC plus. Was just also supposed to hit for average, get on base. He was a top end infield prospect once upon a time. He's still only 27. Again, post-hype, about to turn 28. Post-hype, but he's one of the more believable guys, I think. Looking back in time beyond that, that was in 2022 when he hit those 14. Never really got a full shot in Milwaukee. 197 plate appearances wasn't that good the year before that in 2021. Played a full season in 2020, but a full season in 2020 amounted to 59 games out of 60, 246 plate appearances. He hit 13 home runs that year. in just 246 plate appearances. Same kind of output as the 2022 season. You basically double that for a full season, right? So, 25, 26 home run kind of output. In 348 plate appearances, roughly a half a season the year before in 2019 with Milwaukee, he hit 19 home runs. He stole 9 bases. He looked like the hitter he was supposed to be that year. 303, 368, 570. That was, to this day, the best he's ever been in the majors. But he was supposed to be about that guy. We just never consistently came together opportunity-wise. He had some weird injuries and got sent back down a couple times. But getting that bat against a mediocre pitcher, the dead min at second base, third base minimum, second base minimum, plus Taylor Ward, plus Logan O'Hoppe, it's an approachable lineup anyway. It's a weird lineup, but it's very, very cheap. They're facing Michael Lorenzen. Drury, his talent has kind of evaporated this year, over 149. I talked about it yesterday. A bunch of home runs over the past couple seasons, a lot of quality, and just nothing this year. 149 empty plate appearances, 176, 242, 228, .051 ISO, just one home run. It's been pretty weak. Mickey Moniak is just bad. Really hasn't given us anything. Zach Neto's good. 11 home runs, 14 steals, a 171 ISO. Could probably stand to move him up to, maybe up here in the lineup as well. And then Joe Adele, just weird for counting stats, but really no consistency, not much else. Tons and tons of power when he manages to make contact. The contact is a little bit erratic. 201 ISO, but just a 71 WRC plus, 30% strikeouts, but very good contact. Cheap. I would just totally restructure the order of this lineup. Rangers bats way high up. Angels bats fit into like the middle of the board as a value option. Neither pitcher. Between the two pitchers, I will take the gunshot to the head. It's not actually true. I'd probably take Lorenzen against the Angels, but a little difficult. Jim Parrish, what's going on, buddy? Long time no see. I have 6 lineups today. What teams would you stack with 2 main pitchers on DraftKings? So you have 6 lineups that you'd like us to build right now on the show? You can, for one, I do have stack rankings up on the website at rotoscouts, so you can access those and kind of go by that between projection and value. But one easy shortcut to it is just look at the 5+ implied totals and get one of those teams into each of those lineups, or effectively mix those teams across those lineups. But then don't exclude the Astros and don't exclude the Rangers. And a team we're about to talk about in the Atlanta Braves, I think, is also firmly on the board. So those 3 teams are high end. And then you've got some interesting enough value options in the A's, the Rockies a little bit, even the Nats a little bit. I would say that those 3 teams in the high end pitching environments, or hitting environments rather, are probably my 3 favorite value teams. If I had to throw a 4th one into that mix, it would probably be the Pirates against whoever the hell from Milwaukee. But yeah, I think that's an easy shortcut to building lineups. Is just you follow the chalk somewhat. You don't have to worry about ownership as much as it's made out to be. As long as you differentiate somewhat, gain some leverage against the field somewhere. You don't have to worry about like, I played the most popular stack in the Red Sox, right? Everybody plays the Red Sox. That's how they get up to that ownership. You differentiate in other ways. The pitchers that I would use, and again, we're getting back to recapping the entire show. $8,300 Framber Valdez is the most appealing option on the DraftKings slate. You've got some interesting enough value plays. I like Tobias Myers as an SP2 value. You can throw more dart throw level type options with guys like Frankie Montas against that low end Colorado team. Rockies against a righty on the road is always an appealing spot for pitching. I kind of favor the Rockies bats in that head to head though. Any of the top end pitchers like Nick Pivetta against Oakland is playable in a bad pitching environment. Logan Webb looks terrific. If you could just go these 2 guys in every one of those 6 lineups, that's not a bad way to do it, but you probably get too weighty into that. And you don't want to do that overall. 8,500 for Bassett in that San Francisco game is also appealing. 88 for Charlie is playable. There's a lot of ways to go on this one. It's difficult, but I mean, that's essentially coming in at the end of the show and saying, like, recap the whole show. I appreciate the question. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. But it's a little difficult. Mama's saying, surprised they're going against your normal thought process on pitching, not liking the St. Louis pitcher. I don't even remember what the hell game that is. Who's St. Louis playing? Oh, that's that Royals game. That's right.
The Royals have a
not you. Alexa, off.
Today,
Alexa.
the Kansas City Royals will play the St. Louis Cardinals.
And it's a doubleheader, so she's going to give us both.
First pitch is at 7:45 p.m.
All right, she stopped. What? I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Mama. Going against my normal thought process on pitching, not liking the St. Louis pitcher. What about him is it that you think is against my normal thought process? I just don't think he's a high-end strikeout pitcher. I think he walks too many. It's a good spot for Royals bats. I like the Royals lineup overall. He's cheap, but I don't see where I'm going against the normal thought process. Let me know what you were thinking. We could talk it out. But, yeah, I don't really like Restrepo in that spot. I do think Charlie Morton is pretty playable in this one, going up against Arizona. He's definitely been mixed in terms of the results this season. We do have the Arizona lineup. We'll get that into play here. Look, Charlie at this point is, 75 years old or whatever. The fact that he's still pitching with as much quality as he is on a lot of occasions is appealing enough that with people jumping ship in spots like this, I think he goes under-owned, and he's cheap compared to the upper end of the slate with similar kind of median projection. Maybe his ceiling is a little bit diminished compared to where it used to be and compared to where some of those guys fall, but he's got a lot of quality, and I think that's all soaked up by the discount that you get price-wise. 24.2% strikeouts over 91 innings in 16 starts is better than a lot of guys on the board, including his opponent. A 3.96 ERA with a not dissimilar 4.0 xFIP. 11.7% swinging strikes. He's still not getting dinged for power. Despite a 9.2% barrel, he's good at keeping the ball down. So a 7.8 degree average launch goes a long way toward keeping those home runs in the yard. Doesn't even give up that much premium contact despite some barrels in there. I'm happy to have Charlie. If it melts down and burns me, so be it. Last time out, he gave up 3 earned on 5 hits over 5 1/3, struck out 5, walked 2, but 2 home runs allowed against San Francisco. Start before that was 6 1/3 clean innings of 3-hit ball, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk against Pittsburgh. Faced the Yankees, gave up 5 walks, 4 struck out 4, gave up 5 earned on 5 hits, including a home run over 5 2/3. That was a rough one. Good start before that against the Rays, though. 1 earned run on 3 hits, struck out 8, walked 2 over 6 innings. Bad one against the Nats. 4 earned runs, 5 runs total on 7 hits, struck out just 3. That was a weak one. But a good one to start before that. 6 innings, 1 hit ball, no runs, struck out 6. Happened to walk 5 in that game. That was an ugly one. You can see the walk rate is a little high at 10%. That's where he runs into some problems sometimes. When he wrangles the walks, it typically leads to a better start. If you're following the on-off pattern that was baked into that I didn't mention, we're due for an on start. There's nothing at all predictive or real about the fact that it's been literally every other start over his last 6 starts. But it is technically an on day. But we're not actually saying that. On the other side of this one, over 12 starts, Slate Ciccone, 18.9% strikeouts. Does have a very low 4.5% walk rate. 6.10 ERA with a 4.47 xFIP. Is a better pitcher maybe than his run number here would indicate, as the xFIP would reveal. But he's gotten dinged for a lot of power. 10.1% barrels, fly ball pitcher, 4.55% home runs. Against this home run hitting team, even a diminished version of this home run hitting team, it just seems like Slate Ciccone's under a lot of threat here. And it is, again, I think at 4.52, maybe the Braves fall by the wayside a little bit as compared to all these teams and then maybe some of these teams. So it's a very appealing spot to consider the Braves. It wouldn't surprise me at all if at the end of the night a lower owned Brave stack got there. So definitely keep him in mind if you're building a lot of lineups. If you're building one, I would absolutely consider them as my second stack. Red Sox Braves is a differentiator. Mets Braves, Rangers Braves would be like, leaving out all those 5+ teams. If I'm building 6 lineups like our pal in chat just asked. Sorry, I don't have the chat up. I forgot. Jim just asked. The Braves would be in one of those lineups. If you're building 6 lineups on DraftKings tonight, the Braves should be in at least one of them. It's that good a spot. 3 guys above the magic number for home run power, plus another 2 in the 9s, plus an 8 with a couple 7s in there. That's super appealing, and it's the Atlanta Braves. I know they haven't been as good or consistent this year, but you've got a lot of home run power here. Jared Kelenic in the top spot for 41.32. The pricing has not caught up to the quality of Kelenic this year. 113 WRC plus for the lefty, 45.8% hard hits, 10.7% barrels. He's been very, very good. Still going to strike out a lot, not draw all that many walks, but he's crushing the ball when he makes contact, and he's putting enough balls into play to be totally relevant to this team, filling in admirably in the top spot. 53.38 for Ozzie Albies is priced down for him. It's still expensive for the quality that he's provided so far, but compared to what he's been over the last few seasons, it's actually a little bit discounted. Happy to take shares of Ozzie Albies in this spot, 8.43 in the home run model. Austin Riley, 12+. He's got 12 long balls on the season, a 195 ISO, 117 WRC plus after a very slow start, 51.6% hard hits, 14.9% barrels. He's back. He's fine. Absolutely happy to take shares of Austin Riley, especially if nobody else does. Or not nobody, but if his ownership is down compared to other guys, love the spot. Yeah, Trey mentioning that Eddie Rosario is back on this team now. We'll get to him. First, we talk about Matty Olson, Marcell Ozuna, Adam Duvall. 3 pretty solid power bats in a row there. 10.3, 17.8, and 12.5% barrels. And the low man in that group is actually Matt Olson at 10.3. Last year he was at 16.4, 55.1% hard hits. That's where some of his home run total has gone. 13 homers in 378 is definitely down year over year and the last few years compared to this year. 185 ISO, same thing. But still, these are quality enough power numbers. He's creating runs 8% better than average, still making good contact, even if not like utterly elite contact, with plenty of upside for the money. The diminishment is already in these prices. That's why he cost $51.34 instead of like $6,000, $4,000 like he was at the beginning of the year. Ozuna for $57.42. Price is back down a couple $100 on DK. 23 home runs. He's dipped a little bit in terms of the consistency, but still very high end, very high ceiling. Tons and tons of premium contact. Duvall is just premium contact and home run upside, but he's got it in this spot. 9.64 in the home run model. Eddie Rosario even 7.76 to Trey's point. 7 home runs for Rosario, 8 stolen bases, just a 142 ISO, just a 51 WRC plus. Played his way out of Washington, but caught back on with Atlanta. He's a bat they like. They had him before. Like the upside, 43.7% hard hits for a $3,900, $2,400 lefty late in the lineup. By and large, he's just another outfielder, but if you're going to this team, you can include him in stacks. Probably not till like the second or third Braves lineup that you build, but if you need a cheap option with a little bit of upside, he's absolutely on the board. Sean Murphy is very cheap for his talent at catcher, $3,500 where you need to play the position, $2,900 where you don't. Just 5 home runs, a 178 ISO, but tons of upside. That's only over 111 plate appearances. Believe what we've seen in years past, not the diminished performance so far this year in a small sample. Orlando Arcia, I think we could buy in that this is real at over 325 at this point. Greatly diminished from where he was last year. Mix and match quality shortstop at best. I do think you could draw shares of the Diamondbacks against Charlie Morton's quality. That said, you've got a very scuffling Corbin Carroll up at the top. He's down to 32 on FanDuel, 49 on DK. 3 homers, 16 stolen bases, just a 77 WRC plus. It's been totally lost basically all season. Ketel Marte is probably your better starting point in stacks. 55.36 for the second baseman. 216 ISO, a 133 WRC plus, 17 home runs. Could be more expensive, but isn't. Happy to grab him in shares of Diamondbacks. Jock Peterson for just 48.31. Tons and tons of lefty power against the righty. especially with Charlie giving up some barrels this year. The launch angle kind of saves the day in terms of the home runs, but one mistake to a hitter like Jock could definitely turn into a home run here. 231 ISO, 149 WRC plus, primarily gets in there as a platoon bat on the strong side. Christian Walker, 5,400, 3,700, 22 home runs on the year, 242 ISO over 397 plate appearances. Strikeouts are up, but he's hitting for more power, more premium contacts, so I'll take it. Lourdes Gurriel for 3,000, one of the better looking bobbleheads out there. Don't know if you saw that. It was going around yesterday. It was all purple hair and everything. It looked pretty cool. 13 home runs, a 164 ISO, 105 WRC plus. By the way, the best bobblehead going around is that Costanza one that the Yankees issued the other day. That was on the Friday game. Would have loved to have grabbed that. Not that I'm not like a big bobblehead person. I think I've got like one or two that were giveaways from the Yankees over time. I think there's one back there somewhere. But that would have been a pretty killer one to get. Gabriel Moreno, 37-28. Moderate performance this year, 333 on base and a 103 WRC plus, pretty good. He's cheap at catcher if you need him. Junior Suarez has been really bad. Alec Thomas is a mix and match outfielder who hasn't really performed over his 39 opportunities this year. Oh, I shouldn't say that. 2 home runs, a 216 ISO. Just no consistency in the teeny tiny sample. Last year, 9 home runs, 9 steals, and no consistency over 402. Araldo Perdomo, mix and match on base and correlated scoring type option. Trey jumping into the chat to say that Seinfeld is better than Friends. Agree. Yeah, firm agree. Friends is a very good... Let's do this first. It's Braves bats followed closely behind by the Charlie Morton value that's created by his low salary, followed by Diamondbacks bats, and then Slade Ciccone is probably not on the board, but if you needed the dart from the bargain bin, I do think he has that. It's probably only a DK play, but I think I do like Slade Ciccone better than I like JP Sears at 65 in Fenway. Even probably better than... Considering the matchup, I got to say Frankie's better. But Ciccone is a low-end, throwable, probably going to miss the board and lose dart on DraftKings. So Friends is a very high-end sitcom. Seinfeld is like a creative work of art that redefined the medium. Those are very different things. Sitcom only level, if you showed each complete series to 100 people under the age of 25 right now, I almost guarantee you that Friends would come out on top in polling. I think recent conversation on Twitter and whatnot has borne that out. Seinfeld is, in my opinion, inarguably the better of the two shows. That said, Friends is very good. Friends is funny, even for a sitcom. Even if you do the take the laugh track off experiment, Friends is funny. It's got a lot of will they, won't they, and all that fun stuff in it. And it's a well done, highly executed show. Through a modern lens, it's also problematic that I think they had 2 people on the show through the entire run that weren't white. So that's a little problematic. There's also absurd things like, the size of those apartments for an out-of-work waitress and her friend. Stuff like that you can quibble with. But if you forgive things like that, trespasses that they didn't know any better than in the 90s, it's a very high-end show. Not that Seinfeld is all that much better in some of those departments either, by the way. But yeah, Seinfeld, work of art, work of comedic genius that redefined the medium. Friends is just a really good and one of the best of all time sitcom. Fair enough? Fair enough. Good pitching matchup to end the slate. 85-91 across sites for Chris Bassett. Totally playable. Bassett takes his lumps from time to time, but overall, pretty good pitcher. Pitches deep into games, 102 1/3 over 18 starts. 3.43 ERA, a 4.21 xFIP going up against a gettable Giants team with some strikeouts in it, and particularly with some strikeouts against right-handed pitching. I like the upside for Bassett. Good hitting, good pitching park in San Francisco basically every night. There's definitely upside there. Every now and then he runs headlong into a brick wall and he ruins your day, but that's kind of baked into his pricing at 85.91. I think he's a pretty killer option late in the night. I think he's a little bit outpaced, if you can afford it, by Logan Webb on the other side. Webb's got the lower end strikeout matchup between the two. They're basically the same guy when it comes to strikeouts. 21.1 versus 21.2%. Webb walks way fewer. He's got the better ERA. He's got the better overall stuff. He's fantastic at limiting home runs. 2.4 degree average launch, a 1.03% home run rate. That goes back over time with this pitcher. He's also terrific at pitching deep into games, 119 and a third over 19 starts. Last year, he gave us 216 innings in 33 starts. Year before, 192 and 32. You can see Bassett's right there, though. 200 innings in 33, 181 and 30. These guys are both good options to chase the quality start. Good options to chase win bonuses. Logan Webb. The last time Logan Webb failed to complete at least the 6th inning was on May 5th. In that stretch of starts, he's completed the 7th inning 7 times. The 6th inning in the other 4. Strikeout totals of typically either 6 or 8 through that stretch, almost exactly. He's a very high-end pitcher who just eats up innings, keeps the ball in the yard, limits scoring against. You can see it on the Vegas board with just a 7-run total compared to all these other spots that are showing tons and tons of offense. 3.18 implied total for the Blue Jays, 3.90 for the Giants. For Logan Webb, it's just a matter of finding a few strikeouts against this 18.8% exactly the last 2 seasons lineup. And I think he's talented enough to do it. If not, 7 or 8 innings of clean ball might get us there. If you're stacking these teams, it's probably not the best idea against Logan Webb for the Blue Jays. And then just, with the low end total between the two, I'd probably stack Giants against Chris Bassett. But overall, it's pretty limited and not all that appealing. So we'll do it kind of quick. Jorge Soler from the top spot in the lineup, dramatically underperforming his talent level, just a 171 ISO, 10 home runs. The leadoff spot is interesting for him if he continues to do that basically every day. You do have tons and tons of power upside, tons and tons of power potential, but you can see the premium contact has slipped significantly year over year. The average, the on base are obviously way down. The 102 WRC plus has him above water a little bit, but he's been greatly diminished over these 325 opportunities. Lamont Wade, I totally love the hitter. 195 plate appearances, 312, 446, 422. Only 3 home runs and a 110 ISO this year. Last year he had 17 home runs and a 161 in 519 plate appearances. Has the ability to hit the ball hard from the left side and does have a 44.6% hard hit rate with a 9.8% barrel rate. Barrels the ball significantly, always getting quality hits, quality premium contact rather, and is a tremendous option for on base and correlated scoring. Really strong option for just 36.27. Probably second, third highest priority bat in this lineup if you're stacking against Chris Bassett. Top priority bat is probably Elliot Ramos, 4,800, 3,500. 13 home runs. That is not incorrect pricing on FanDuel, and it's maybe a little 200 low on DraftKings. Considering over 242 plate appearances now, he's got a 233 ISO, 13 homers, 16.3% barrels, 52.3% hard hits. Kid has quickly become one of the better power hitting outfielders in the league. Maybe it doesn't continue, but I don't know, seems like it's gonna. Patty Bailey for just 4,000, 2,800, 6 home runs, a 137 ISO is not great, but 6 home runs is all right over 243 plate appearances, 41.9% hard hits, moderate strikeout, got the ability to draw some walks, creates runs at an above average pace, 117 WRC plus. He's a compelling enough catcher who hits from both sides of the plate and typically is in the heart of the lineup when you go to this team. Matt Chapman, a lot of premium contact. Michael Conforto, also a lot of premium contact. Mixed results for both hitters, 12 home runs, 10 home runs, 176 and a 207 ISO, both guys at a 113 WRC plus. Neither slash line is all that appealing, but there's a lot of individual upside on any given slate. Conforto, the cheaper of the two options. It's call it a tie between the two as far as which is appealing, but as a tiebreaker, the lower price on Conforto in the outfield versus a higher price at a more key position at third base is probably the more appealing spot. Mike Yastrzemski also makes a bunch of premium contact, 7 home runs, a 172 ISO, mixed results, 100 WRC plus on the nose, over 227. Tairo Estrada, a down season so far this year. He does have 9 home runs and 315 opportunities, but everything else is kind of diminished to who he's been over time. A mix and match play at second base for 3,700 on DK, 2,600 on FanDuel. 35-25 for Brett Wisely puts him in play a little bit with positional flex. I'd rather have Estrada still if I'm playing at second base. You do get the shortstop eligibility here, shortstop and outfield over here. 285, 319, 423 with a 112 WRC plus over 139. It's a mix and match play from the left side. If you're going to the underperforming Blue Jays, George Springer is what he is at this point. I still believe that there's a turnaround coming, but it's not going to be a very good or convincing one going forward. He might get to moderate numbers. Maybe he gets to 20 homers and maybe has a 2020 season, but this is going to take a lot to improve the slash line. 92 WRC plus. He's very cheap, so any of the struggles are already baked into the price. But he's really struggled this year, so it's getting more and more difficult to recommend. And against a pitcher who just saps power, saps upside, it's tough to get to. I like Spencer Horwitz a little better, 4,300, 2,600, second base eligibility on both sites. Over 99 plate appearances, 333, 455, 494. 3 home runs. The power output can come and go. He's not the best power hitter, but he's very good at getting on base. Should hit for average. Largely has been platooning in this lineup, but should be in the lineup today. Vladdy for 5,000, 3,100 continues to be wildly underpriced, honestly, on both sides. 13 home runs, a 163 ISO. Both of those have gone up in recent weeks. 291, 368, 454 with just ridiculous premium contact capabilities, a low strikeout rate. He's a superstar. Justin Turner for 37.28 should probably just move up to the leadoff spot given the 347 on base and the lack of any other qualities. 108 WRC plus is all you're getting correlated scoring from Justin Turner, which is not ideal at third base or first base. Bo Bichette for 4,000, 2,600. 4 home runs, finally stole his 5th base, but he's been stuck at these counting stats forever now. Really limited season from Bo Bichette, from a player who used to be very, very good. 3,800, 2,800 from Dalton Varsho. 11 home runs, that's all he really does is hit for power, hit home runs, and it's kind of limited at that, and going up against a pitcher who just doesn't allow guys to do that makes him a really unappealing option. Danny Jansen is just a power-hitting catcher. Ernie Clement, Kevin Kiermaier, just mix and match options. Clement is by far the more appealing of those two bats. He's got multi-position for 23 on FanDuel. Just third base at 28, not ideal on DraftKings. Prefer him at either short or second, honestly, but primarily at second. That said, he's not at all a priority, and it's a very low-end spot against Logan Webb in a pitcher's park. Kiermaier is just here for defense. That is your slate up and down, gang. Boston lineup has more strikeouts at the top of the lineup for Sears now. Did something change? I don't know, man. I feel like that's playing with fire. I'm probably one of JP Sears' bigger advocates on the right day. This does not feel like the right day. We've used him. I've recommended him publicly. All things considered, I don't necessarily think this is the right day. There are definitely some strikeouts there. I'll give you that. But like Robbie Resnider's strikeout rate is only in there because he's very good against left-handed pitching. Against lefties this season, Refsnyder is striking out 26.3% of the time, but he's got a 15% walk rate, 2 of his home runs, a 308, 438, 462 slash line, and his creative runs 53% better than average. Westbrook, who we talked about having a little bit of power in his track record from the minor leagues, down the bottom of the lineup, in a sample of just 17 plate appearances, does have a home run on the board. 29.4% strikeouts, but it's tiny sample, obviously. Where else are we looking? Let's see. Duran. Oh, am I moving that around the screen on you guys? No, it's not. All right, good. Duran striking out 25.2, slashing just 241, 317, 304 lefty 75 WRC plus. Definitely diminished by lefties there. O'Neill is a righty with immense power. I don't really care. He just strikes out when he strikes out. Against lefties, 333, 465, 681 this year with a 204 WRC plus. a 348 ISO and 6 of his home runs. So, like, even if you go strikeout, home run, that's probably not great for JP Sears. Then you run into Rafi Devers. Devers lefty this year, 245, 310, 412, just a 97 WRC plus, just 3 of his home runs, 167 ISO. Little diminished. You get Connor Wong after that, 3 of his home runs, 18.6% strikeouts, 333, 419, 493, 156 WRC plus. I kind of believe in the Red Sox upside, especially with a 5.79, 5.80 implied total on their side. That said, they are going to be chalky. They'll be super popular at those numbers. It's just really believable in this spot. I don't think it leads you to JP Sears so much as maybe it leads you away from a chalky Red Sox stack, because there are a lot of high-end teams to choose from today. So if you didn't necessarily rush out and roster Red Sox just because you maybe see something in that Sears or their results against lefties this year, I could get behind that more than I could get behind the idea of any kind of upside for JP Sears. Logan Webb, tremendous option if you can afford him. If you can't, Framber Valdez is cheaper on FanDuel and way, way inexplicably cheaper on DraftKings in a tremendous matchup against the Miami Marlins. Nick Pivetta is a believable option against the Athletics. That said, Athletics have some power, some quality in that lineup, and they're in similarly high-end conditions in Fenway Park with the wind blowing out. Chris Bassett is very playable on the other side of that San Francisco game. Love the option at 91.85. Charlie Morton for a little bit less. Looks pretty appealing on FanDuel. A little bit more. Equally playable to Bassett on the DraftKings slate. Maybe Bassett edges him out slightly for a better matchup and a better ballpark at 85. But he deserves shares. Michael Wacha against St. Louis on DraftKings at 76. Very appealing as a value option. I like him better than Severino for 75 against the Nats. Severino's a mid-range dart throw on both sites. A little bit better for the discounted price on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. Chris Sanchez, I just hate the matchup against the Dodgers, and I think he's overperformed his talent so far, but he's very good at limiting power, limiting premium contact, limiting home run balls. I think that maybe diminishes the Dodgers, and maybe on the other side diminishes the Phillies, because Gavin Stone does much the same thing. Neither guy is a overly high-end strikeout pitcher. There should be plenty of contact, and the conditions greatly favor hitting in that game. So you see 2 very high-end totals for the offenses there. I do agree with that both of those teams are playable, but I think the quality and what those 2 pitchers do well diminishes the stacks, while the matchups and what the bats do well and those Vegas totals in the ballpark and the conditions diminish the pitchers a little bit. So it is an all 4 sides are kind of in both directions. That's not how you want to build an intersection. If I had a gun to my head, I would probably say don't play anything from it, because it probably all just falls into the middle, and there's a lot of other good spots. By the exact same token, on the other side of that, you could play any part of it and win the slate today. That's how good those two teams are. Sorry to be a little wishy-washy about it. It's the best I can explain it, though. That's how it lands. Tobias Myers is a compelling value option. 7,700 plays pretty well on DK. 74, I have more faith in, like Charlie Morton, let's say, at 87. But if you need that additional discount to buy more bats or whatever, I think he's totally playable against the Pirates. He's found enough success. So I don't dislike that. Michael Lorenzen, don't love at 8,100. At least he's not all that high priced against a gettable Angels lineup, but he's not all that good. Gavin Stone, I just talked about against the Phillies. The price is too high to even make it like a value dart or anything like that. Frankie Montas, no faith at all, but he's very cheap against a very gettable Rockies lineup on the road. That said, out of all the ballparks, the road ballparks to find the Rockies in, that Cincinnati one is one of the higher end ones for offense. I have no love whatsoever for Frankie Montas, but he is cheap and you can absolutely play it and could provide enough value for sure. Sears, again, as a value bin dart, maybe you could do it, but I really don't see it on with all that offense showing in Fenway. I think this is a more appealing value dart. Grab Slade Ciccone in a lower end spot for offense for 200 less than JP Sears. I think that's a better spot for a dart throw. Griff Canning is a hard no for me against Texas. Patrick Corbin shouldn't even be listed here. He's that bad against the Mets. 55, even at price, I don't want it. Graceffo, I really don't see as a super high-end DFS play, and I like that Royals lineup. He's very cheap, so going back to that conversation, like if you wanted it for that reason, fine. But I think I prefer Ciccone for 1,000 less. Martin Perez is a no, Freeland is a no, and Brian Hoeing is a no at the end of the slate. Lot of power showing on the home run board today. You guys have access to all of this at rotoscouts. Number of guys above the magic number, and solid handful of guys, 13 plus too. That's a very good list. A lot of strong hitters there. A lot of Rangers, a lot of Mets, some Red Sox shining through, some Astros, some Braves, all the usual suspects, but then a solid list of guys through the 9s and the 8s down into the mid 7s as well. A lot from a bunch of those teams, but like you get the Athletics creeping in here. Soderstrom, unfortunately, not playing again. But you get, Rooker's up this way. Langoliers is up that way. And then you get some more supporting bats as you scroll down the board here. Same thing for the Mets. Same thing for the Braves. A little bit shining through for the Pirates. Don't sleep on them as much as I think that Tobias Myers is playable on that side of that game. The fact that some of those Pittsburgh bats are showing a little bit of friskiness, and we saw, on full display the other day with the ridiculous number of home runs that they hit in that game, they do have a little bit of power upside on the right day. A lot of ways this one could go. Really deep pitching slate. A lot of interesting value options. Some definite traps. Some ludicrously high run totals. This should be a high scoring and fun slate. Like the looks of it. Hop into Discord if you got any lingering questions. I got to get stuff updated. 6:15 again. We managed to go overtime from where I wanted to end the show, but that's okay. I'll have stuff updated in the next few minutes for you. Check Rotoscouts. Follow at Rotoscouts Twitter handle. Like and retweet stuff. Check out our pals over at acemind.io. Promo code Rotoscouts gets you 20% off your first month over there. Thank you guys very much for all the likes, all the enthusiasm, hanging out with me all this time. If you weren't here, I'd just be talking to myself, which would be weird. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow for more. See you.